Tonight, London has chosen to speak in a low voice. Rain drifts across stone, metal, and river, and the city answers with reflections and hush. If you're here to sleep, let each drop become a soft metronome beside your breath. If you're here to study or work, let this walk set a steady rhythm, no rush, no demands. We'll cross Westminster Bridge at a calm pace, breathing the scent of wet stone while the Thames writes slow lines beneath us. There's nothing to solve and nowhere urgent to be. Time here is measured by water and light. Welcome to a London that allows itself to be seen, to a walk that asks nothing and offers everything, quiet, warm light, and a sky that leans a little closer. London begins with a whisper. Rain tapping the iron rail turns the bridge into an instrument. Westminster Bridge does not impose itself. It introduces itself. Arches, lines, lamps, everything knows the lead tonight belongs to the water. I move toward the center, letting the soft thud of footsteps set a patient beat. On one side, silhouettes pass with polite distance, umbrellas opening like small night flowers. On the other, taxis slide by and dissolve into thin veils of gloss, careful not to disturb the spell. The air holds the clean scent of the city under rain, wet stone, cool metal, and the dark, steady breath of the river. Moisture rounds the edges of buildings and polishes the curves of the lamps. Light does not glare, it comforts. Each lamppost spreads a warm circle across the pavement, and each circle holds its own reflection, a tiny duplicate of the world within reach. When a drop lands in the center of a puddle, ripples pull the gaze inward, and for a second there is nothing else. To the left, Big Ben watches with patience. Rain suits the tower. It softens the gold, quiets the sharp lines, and lays a thin film of slow time across the clock face. If the chime reaches us, it does not interrupt. It creates a pause the mind is grateful for. It's strange how, on nights like this, the city organizes its sound by itself. The deep purr of a double-decker drifting past like a river of light. The soft brush of a sleeve against an umbrella. The precise click of a drop breaking into another along the iron seam. Nothing competes. Everything adds. The rail gathers little beads of water in a neat row. Lean close, and each bead is a whole world. Stretched lamps, a slab of gray sky, a passerby stepping into a universe inside a drop. A modest wind slides in at an angle, not to argue, only to rearrange the pattern. On the asphalt, puddles draw brief maps, and every crossing footstep colors them with a round, exact sound. The bridge breathes like a large animal sleeping, constant, deep, kind. I like to move without looking for the end, noticing only what is near. 3 paving slabs, a handrail that pauses, a lamppost that pours honey-colored light into stone. London is a city with a vocabulary of its own, and tonight it uses the simple words. Rain translates everything. Colors are fewer, but more certain. Textures speak more than they do in daylight. A traffic light shifts to green, and its glow spreads across the road like a small lake. A cab stops. Its interior light opens a warm rectangle that lasts the length of a door open close in, then the car moves on. For a moment, the lit rectangle floats in the puddle before the water folds it away. Below, the Thames speaks an old language. You don't have to see it. You can hear the wide murmur that fills every gap. Sometimes it rises, sometimes it falls. Sometimes it brushes a pillar and leaves a soft accent. Sometimes it carries a stray branch and draws a watery whisper along the stone. The river ties the sentences together. Whatever happens above occurs inside its long phrase. If London were a sentence, the subject would be the bridge tonight, but the verb would still be the river. Moisture settles on clothes with a gentle weight. It's not uncomfortable, it's an invitation to slow down. On the umbrella, if there is one, drops become a tiny percussion near, regular, companionable. Without it, shoulders receive the rain in a broader music of fine frequencies. The collar of the coat gathers a mild, familiar scent, like a library left open to the weather. I take one measured breath, then another, and the air returns with the quiet taste of stone and night. A bus glides by, the red softened to velvet under the water. Its wheels paint arcs that vanish as quickly as they appear. For a heartbeat, the windows carry small theaters' faces lit by screens. A hand smoothing a coat sleeve, someone closing their eyes and leaning with the turn, and then the bus is gone, leaving only a darker ribbon of road that brightens back under the rain. Far downriver, a siren rises and fades as if told from another city. It doesn't reach here with urgency. It arrives as a memory and dissolves. The more the rain falls, the more order the bridge seems to find. The lamps join the rhythm, the steps keep time. In the gaps between drops, silence gathers like a soft fabric. No one is in a hurry. People pass with the careful manners of night small nods, brief glances, the choreography of shared space. A cyclist slows, crossing the slick center line without a sound, tires drawing two narrow signatures on the sheen. The city allows this slow pace. It even seems to adopt it. I pause beside a lamppost and rest a hand on the cool iron. The bead lines along the rail tremble and release, reform and travel. Through the gaps, the river is ink with a powder of lights. Each bridge upstream and downstream sends its own reflections drifting into the current, and the Thames collects them, stitches them, and unrolls them beneath our feet. On the opposite bank, the Parliament buildings glow a gentle amber, as if lit from within by fire and tea. The rain blurs their outline into a kindness. When I begin to walk again, I keep the steps small. The pavement here has a fine grit that darkens to near black under the water. It reflects like polished graphite. My heel clicks and then hushes, the toe lifts. The soul writes a quiet comma. London edits the sentence and rereads it aloud. Breath deepens, thought simplifies. It's enough to notice the soft bounce in the bridge deck, the roundness of the handrail, the tiny sound of a drop striking another drop on the cuff of the coat. A pair of tourists stop to take one last photo, rain freckling the glass. The shutter is a whisper. They laugh under their hands. Then they fold their umbrella, and for 5 steps they let the rain touch their hair as if to prove something to themselves. A black cab slows and tilts its light. They wave it on. In the far distance, the London Eye draws a quiet arc across the cloud. It isn't our destination yet. It is simply a gentle promise that the night continues. I reach the first third of the span and look back. Big Ben is now a tower and a reflection, 2 clocks holding the same calm. Time feels less like numbers and more like water moving under a bridge that I send going anywhere. The city doesn't need an argument to be beautiful tonight. It is enough to stand and listen. Every material has its note. Iron taps, stone breeze, glass sighs, water hums. Even the rain has tones, a high lace against the coat, a lower brush across the rail, a deeper drum when it finds a wooden bench. A gust leans in and shifts the pattern. Drops angle across the lamplight and draw lines that seem almost visible, as if someone were sketching the weather on thin paper. The bridge holds still. The river answers with a long vowel. Under the arch, a boat moves slow, a shadow with small windows. It leaves a subdued wake that stole the reflections and hands them back, slightly rearranged. The city accepts the edit and keeps speaking in its low voice. It occurs to me that this is the kind of rain that improves everything. It softens edges, lowers volume, and polishes ordinary moments until they shine. Puddles become small galleries. A taxi door becomes an ember. A crosswalk becomes a satin ribbon. Even the gaps between steps become meaningful. You can feel the mind reorganize itself around this patience. You notice detail because there is time for it. There is time for everything essential. Another double-decker approaches. The top deck shows a reader with a book. The lower deck shows a row of quiet faces. The bus slows at the light and pauses in front of the Parliament glow. The red and the amber blend for a second old, new river road, and then the signal changes. The bus lifts itself and moves off, not hurried, just certain. The rain erases the wheel's marks and invites the next moment in. The bridge surface rises and then settles, a shallow hill beneath the feet. At the crown, the city is a panorama of soft ideas. To the left, the tower and the river. To the right, the broader darkness and the promise of South Bank. The smell changes almost imperceptibly, more water, less stone. The sound of the Thames pulls nearer, the scribble of droplets on the rail more pronounced. Up here the wind has a little more room, but it behaves. A companion, not a critic. I walk to the exact center and stop again. Behind me, the route I've just taken writes itself in mirrors across the pavement. Ahead, the bridge repeats in a second half, symmetrical and new. It's like standing between two pages of the same book. The city turns them by breathing. A cyclist rings a small bell, barely a bell, more of a bright dot in the rain, and passes with a nod. I let the sound vanish into the river and watch the ripples in the nearest puddles settle back into smooth. If you're listening to fall asleep, this is a good place to let the day go. If you're working, this is a good place to anchor your focus. Notice the drop, the step, the breath, the quiet river. There's no need to hold any moment. Each one arrives on its own and leaves on its own, like lights sliding along the water. I take the first steps down from the crown of the bridge. The lamps lead the way, evenly spaced, neither urgent nor lazy. Somewhere upriver, a distant horn rounds a bend and fades, the sound wrapped in rain. The pavement glows as if lit from within. My coat carries the proof of weather and feels a little heavier, a helpful reminder of gravity's kindness. The rail at my side continues its small arithmetic of beats. Every few seconds, one drop gathers another, leans, and falls. The equation resets, the world returns to balance. By the time I reach the next lamp, I can see the curve that will guide us off the bridge toward the South Bank, where the path runs beside the water and the London Eye rests above the dark like a slow blinking star. But we are not there yet. The bridge still has a few quiet lines left to read. I slow even more, enough to hear the separate layers of the rain, the fine thread on metal, the soft grain on cloth, the rounder notes where water meets water. The city is an orchestra that has chosen to play pianissimo, and the conductor is the sky. One last look toward the Parliament windows, still amber, still gentle, and I ease forward. The rain doesn't stop. Good. It keeps time so we don't have to. The Thames carries the reflections downstream and makes room for new ones. Ahead, the stairs descend and the sound shifts. A little more river, a little less road. We'll follow that in a moment. For now, the bridge finishes its sentence and sets the tone for the rest of the night. Unhurried, attentive enough. The clock face glows like a quiet ember in the rain, a circle of soft gold set into the dark. Big Ben doesn't announce itself tonight. It rests, it keeps, it listens. I move along the balustrade toward the Houses of Parliament, and the sound gathers into a steady pattern: water on iron, water on stone, water on water, 3 simple syllables repeating until the mind settles to match them. On the riverside, the lamps pour a warm wash over the pavement, and the rain edits every edge. Ornamental fences turn into lace. Statues become silhouettes with gentle outlines. Windows breathe a low amber from deep rooms. The stone of the palace looks newly washed, its carvings darker in the grooves, its planes alive with tiny threads of runoff. Even the gutters speak in their own voice-short, liquid phrases that begin and end without hurry. A pair of footfalls pass behind me, then to nothing. The road sound has sunk a little, as if the city placed a palm over its mouth and smiled. Buses drift past like red lanterns on a slow current. Their reflections stretch and return. Tires brush the surface and leave a fan of droplets that settle back into place as if difference were never part of the plan. There is so little to manage here. The weather is doing the arranging. My only task is to notice. The clock's hands lift and lean. Somewhere inside the tower, there is a mechanism with a calm heart. I imagine it, not to analyze, but to borrow its composure. The rain thickens for half a minute, then thins for half a minute more, as though the sky is breathing. When the chime arrives, if it arrives, it comes like a thought you are already having. A rounded tone that finds the ribs and lingers there. It is not loud, it is convincing. I trace the lines of the building with my eyes, pinnacles, tracery, windows set in rhythm. The facade stretches like music scored for stone. Rain gathers along the sills and beads before it falls. It leaves clean, narrow strokes on the glass that erase themselves instantly. A guard passes under a lamp and becomes simply a shape, a measured movement in a field of soft light. The presence of people here is gentle bodies keeping one another's distance, umbrellas tilted like courteous bows. The smoke changes again, less metal, more limestone, a whisper of wet wood from old doors. Somewhere to my right, a bicycle chain turns and clicks. Somewhere to my left, a taxi idles like a cat purring at the curb. The river holds everyone's conversation and lowers the volume until it is just texture. I rest a hand against the stone and feel its coolness travel into my palm steady, not cold. This place is made to last. Tonight, the rain is part of the maintenance. A small eddy bulges along the river wall and slaps in a soft, regular beat. It sets a second tempo beneath the drops. I match my steps to it without thinking. Heel, toe, pause. Heel, toe, pause. A set of windows high above throws a faint pattern across the wet pavement, and the wind draws it sideways like a curtain. Across the water, silhouettes of passing boats mark their paths with thread-thin wakes, their running lights reproduced in a broken necklace below. The Thames collects these sparks and hands them along the city, a moving archive of small certainties. I pass beneath one lamp and then another. Their pools do not overlap. Each one is its own room. In the first, stone smells like rainwater poured over warm dust. In the next, the scent fades and the river sound grows. In the third, I can hear the soft click of a traffic signal changing on the far side of the road. The world becomes a sequence of attentions, no rush, no tug, just one clear thing after another. If you are listening to fall asleep, you can let the details blur now and keep only the pattern. Light, rain, river, breath. If you are studying, you can keep the details and let them hold you in place, like bookmarks tucked in every few pages. There is nothing urgent to do. The city is already doing the work of being beautiful. A tourist couple pauses near the railing. They share the hood of a jacket and look up at the clock. One points, the other nods, and they both laugh softly at something the rain said to them. The laughter is small and round, the kind that doesn't roll far. A bus door opens and closes. It's just one beat, but it lands cleanly in the measure, exactly where you'd expect it. The road inhales, the river exhales, the tower listens. I step closer to the river wall where the spray sometimes kisses the tiles. The surface is darker than the sky, but brighter than the stone, and in between where reflections feel at home. Each drop that lands draws a tiny ring, and the rings bump and knit and smooth, like a conversation no one needs to lead. The Parliament lights are steady. They do not argue with the weather or the hour. They accept the rain and make a kinder version of themselves. When the wind veers, I hear the faintest echo from the arches, less a sound than a texture that wraps the syllables of the rain and returns them softer. The bridge behind me answers with its own note, a low string. For a moment, the whole area becomes an instrument played with water and air. If you were to record it and play it back dry, it would lose half its meaning. Moisture is the conductor tonight, and quiet is the score. Two cyclists roll by, their lights a foxfire white. Their tires make a whisper like a pencil on paper. They pass without splash, and the silence behind them heals as quickly as a pond heals after a leaf lands. A delivery van noses along and stops with care, its brake lights filling a puddle with red. When it moves again, the puddle keeps the red for one breath and then lets it go. Nothing clings here. Everything arrives and leaves in good order. I glance up at the filigree along the roofline, thin, complex, and a little darker than the body of the building. Rain gathers there too, of course. It gathers everywhere, but it is not weight, it is Polish. It asks for nothing except your attention, and even that it asks softly. I offer it what I have, 1 minute of full noticing. In return, the scene returns the favor with interest. Colors quiet down to their truest selves. Edges relax. Time lengthens. When the chime comes again, it is almost inside the breath I am taking. The note blooms, holds, fades, and leaves the world exactly as it found it, only more true. I don't count the hour. It doesn't matter. What matters is the release that follows, an exhale from stone and river that says, continue. So I do. I track the curve of the fatade toward the corner where the path will bend back to the bridge, and then forward along the water. The ground here is smooth and dark with a thin gloss. Every 10 steps, a new reflection appears and asks to be admired, a window repeating itself, a lamp balancing upside down, the gold of the clock face fragmenting into coins. I don't need all of them. I keep one and let the rest pass, like choosing one sentence from a book to carry into the day. A light rain becomes a fine rain, becomes a mist. The fabric on my shoulders records each change. The sound shifts with it. Fewer clicks, more hush, a soft band of white spread evenly from ear to ear. It is the kind of sound that makes room for thought but does not demand it. If you are working, this is the stretch where the task becomes simple. If you are drifting to sleep, this is where the edges of the room dissolve and you float. At the far end of the wall, a set of steps waits. Beyond them, South Bank loosens into open space and the great wheel draws its slow arc over the river. That is for later. For now, I glance back at the tower one last time. The clock face is steady, the hands clear, the rain a veil you can see through without effort. The building breathes, the river breathes. I match them step by step, breath by breath, and carry the rhythm forward into the next part of the night. I step onto the rise of Westminster Bridge and let the lamps lead, one measured circle of light after another. The rain is steady, not stern, filling the air with a fine texture that smooths everything it touches. Each post becomes a quiet island. Between them, small straits of darkness flow toward the river. I keep a deliberate pace, heel and toe aligned with the sound of water, so that the walk itself feels composed, like reading slowly enough to taste every word. A red bus approaches from behind, softened by the weather into a moving lantern. It passes with a velvet hush, wheels combing the road into thin fans of spray, windows flickering with small scenes, someone tucking a scarf under a collar, a child staring through glass, a hand wrapped around a book's spine. For a moment, the bus is all there is color, motion, warmth, and then it is gone, leaving the bridge brighter for having carried it. The rain closes over the sound as a pond closes over a thrown pebble. Underfoot, the pavement holds a patient shine. Puddles collect at the edges like shallow mirrors trimmed in stone. When a drop lands just so, rings travel across a reflected lamppost, and the pillar seems to breathe. The rail beside me is banded with beads, each one a capsule of the night. If I look closely, I see a tiny clock face inverted, a sliver of sky, my own hand shifting as a shadow against iron. The wind angles the rain across the bridge, but it never bites. It guides, it edits, it keeps time. Halfway up the arc, the city rearranges itself. Behind me, Big Ben holds his gentle gold. Ahead, the river opens into a broad, dark sentence punctuated by bridges. Far to the right, the London eye traces a faint curve, all definition softened by weather. The Houses of Parliament glow with a quiet that feels interior, as if the building were lit by thought. Nothing asks for attention. Everything deserves it. I slow a little more to meet the mood halfway. A cyclist glides by with a single bright bell, a clean dot of sound that lands and dissolves. Footsteps pass me on the right unhurried, sure, and recede into the rain. Across the road, a cab draws up. Door opens, door closes, a rectangle of light folding and unfolding like a page. The rhythm of the bridge is self-keeping. It doesn't require counting. It holds together because the river holds it, speaking its long, low vowel under the architecture. I lift my eyes to the crowns of the lamps and the narrow cones they cast onto falling water. The rain shows itself there visible for an instant as pale threads, then gone. Along the parapet, the stone is darkened to almost black, and the runoff makes little silver seams that braid and separate. The ironwork gathers droplets until gravity persuades them. They bow, they release, they join the rest. It is a language without nouns, all verbs and adverbs, brightening, softening, returning again and again. Near the top of the span, a faint sway lives in the structure, more felt than seen, a pulse from the city's breathing. I pause to let it pass through me, a reminder that even what looks solid is participating in the weather. The chime from the tower, when it comes, is a rounded reassurance. It arrives inside the rain, not above it, and leaves the air smoother than before. I don't name the hour. The rain already has. I look down through the gaps in the balustrade to the Thames. Reflections drift and break and recombine in a patient collage. White lamps, amber windows, the brief red of a taillight, widened and then gathered again by the current. A boat moves under the arch with the confidence of something that knows the route by heart. Its wake presses the river's handwriting up against the stone and then lets it flatten, ready for the next sentence. The city's palette narrows as the rain deepens. Grays make room for grays, gold becomes honey, red becomes wine dark. In the reduced range, details become clear, a droplet traveling the length of a railing stitch by stitch. The soft scuff of rubber on wet road. The way a coat's shoulder darkens one shade at a time and then holds. I take another measured breath and feel the body accept the pace, no urgency left to resolve, only the small work of noticing. At the crown of the bridge, I turn my head left and right, not to choose a direction, but to confirm that both exist. To the left, the tower and the palace. To the right, the open curve toward South Bank. I stand between version and version of the same night. The wane brings a mild change, less river, more road, and then switches back. A single gull calls somewhere near the water, and the sound dies in the mist as if cushioned by cloth. A couple passes hand in hand, heads close under one umbrella. They walk as if they had practiced being quiet together. Their steps create a new measure, 2 strides, a pause, 2 strides, a pause, and I fall into it for as long as we share the span. When they are gone, the bridge returns to its original tempo without complaint, rain, river, light, breath. Patterns here don't insist. They invite. Descending from the highest point, I let the lamps take me one by one, enter the circle, cross the circle, leave the circle, and into the next like moving through rooms in a house you know well. The world outside each room is the same night, but inside the light, the details organize themselves. In one pool, the rail is the main character. In the next, the puddle. In the next, the low line of traffic gathering and thinning in red. It's easy to stay. It's easy to continue. The bridge makes both choices gentle. The last third of the span shows the promise of the river path ahead. Trees beading with water, benches shining along the wall, the slow geometry of the Jubilee Bridges crossing like ribbons. But before that, I allow one more pause beside a lamp whose glass hums faintly with the warmth inside. The rain here is almost musical, the pattern more articulate where it strikes the metal collar and scatters into fine spray. The sound gathers around the word enough and repeats it until the world agrees. A final double-decker drifts past at a dignified pace, not rushing to be anywhere, simply completing its line. I watch the upper windows past the lamp and take a little of its light along, the way a book keeps your hands warm for a second after you put it down. Then the bus is gone and the lamppost returns to itself, a small sun and a night that has chosen patience over drama. By the time I reach the far side, I have not changed the city, but it has arranged me into its order slower breath, longer attention, softer edges. The bridge has done what bridges do, connected two places and, in crossing, made a third the time spent between. I step toward the stairs that fold down to the river path. The rain is still falling, which is to say the rhythm is still set. The Thames takes the reflections we leave behind and lays new ones in their place, untroubled, inexhaustible. We carry the tone forward. I step down from the bridge to the south bank, where the river path widens and the city loosens its shoulders. Trees line the promenade, each leaf carrying a cold bead that drips at its own tempo. The rain here sounds different, less on stone, more on wood and water softened by the open air and the spread of the walkway. The Thames keeps talking close to the wall, a low ribbon of sound that threads the scene from end to end. Ahead, the London Eye hangs above the dark like a patient wheel. Its outline is smudged by mist, but the shape is unmistakable, an enormous slow breath drawn in glass and steel. Beneath it, the ground shines like graphite, a clean, even sheen. The lamps along the path pull their light in ovals that overlap just enough to guide a steady pace. I match my steps to them, crossing from one oval to the next, gathering only what I need: wet leaf, warm light, moving water. A vendor closes a cart under a striped awning. The canvas gives up a thin curtain of runoff. The stream lands in a bucket with a quiet, regular note. Across from him, a bench holds a fine layer of drops that makes the wood look lacquered. I rest a hand for a second. The chill is precise but not unfriendly. Somewhere behind me, a gull turns a lazy arc and disappears into the gray. The air smells of river and roasted coffee fading from a kiosk that is almost done for the night. Near the eye, the rain sharpens. In the glow of the structure's lighting, drops become briefly visible lines, tiny, slanted stitches against the sky. The wheel itself feels almost still. Each capsule waits with a soft interior glow, as if lit by memory rather than electricity. The reflections on the pavement multiply, a thin rim of light, then another, then a thicker band as I draw closer. Puddles hold the wheel in fragments and hand it back whole as you pass. I slow beneath the spokes and listen. The rain on metal changes pitch. The ribs of the wheel collect and shed in a finer pattern, like brushwork. A boat murmurs beneath the pier and releases a cushion of wavelets that tick the floats in a measured sequence. Left, right, then vanish. On the far side of the river, Parliament's honey light is still there, translated into a softer language by distance and water. It rides in pieces along the surface, always rearranging, never lost. Families drift past with quiet voices, children tucked into hoods, a stroller wrapped in plastic that creases with a soft crackle. A cyclist coasts by with a chain barely voiced, tires writing two pale lines on the gloss. The carousel nearby is still. Its horses hold their poses as if listening to the rain. The gold paint looks deeper when wet, the mirrors darker and more secret. A few bulbs stay on, making a small constellation under the canopy. I pass the ticket entrance where ropes make gentle curves across the ground. Drops bead along the fibers like a string of tiny pearls, and every now and then one releases and taps the post below. The rhythm is almost metronomic. If you're here to fall asleep, this is the measure to keep. Tap, breath, tap, breath. If you're here to study, keep the same measure, and let the wheel's slow outline be a kind of diagram for focused simple shapes, steady edges, no rush. Beyond the eye, the path opens into a long run of trees. Their branches knit a light canopy that breaks the rain into finer pieces. It becomes more like a hush than a fall. The scent shifts to wet bark and damp earth, a welcome note after stone. Underfoot, the surface changes from smooth to slightly pebbled and back again, a texture the feet can read without help from the eyes. The lamps here are a little farther apart, so the darkness settles more gently between them. A busker packs up under the eaves of the Royal Festival Hall. The last note of a guitar hangs almost invisibly in the wet air, then disappears as if the rain absorbed it. The hall's glass throws a clean reflection across the walkway lines in rectangles, warm interior grays. People float through those rectangles like slow-moving shadows, and their outlines blur at the edges where condensation meets glass. The city is full of rooms tonight, and each room seems to understand the weather. By the river wall, I pause to look down where small eddies turn their circles against the current. The surface looks dark from above, but the water isn't heavy. It moves with intent, and the rain only writes on it for a second before the script dissolves and another line begins. A tourist boat downstream makes a gentle pivot. The wake reaches us as a sequence of shallow arcs, easy to miss if you're not watching. The arcs slide under the lights, pick them up, and set them down again. A pair of friends pass with shared headphones. Their steps match perfectly, an accidental choreography made by the path's width, and the rain as encouragement to keep close. They smile without talking, the kind of smile you hear before you see. A black cab on the opposite bank eases along the embankment. The red of its tail light stretches over the water until a small wave breaks the line into rubies. By the time the surface mends, the cab has gone, but the color remains in the eye like an afterimage. I move on, letting the eye fall behind. The structure becomes a lighter trace in the cloudy air, then a memory shaped like a circle. Ahead, the Jubilee Bridges draw their fine cables across the river, a delicate stitching from bank to bank. Their deck plates will sing a slightly different note in the rain, more metallic, more precise. We'll hear that soon. For now, the South Bank keeps its calm trees breathing, benches shining, the long steady whisper of the Thames keeping time. At the edge of a plaza, I stop again. The rain chooses this moment to ease, thinning from threads to mist. The sound of water changes with it. Clicks become hush, beats become film. Even the footsteps around me seem to soften. I watch the last open umbrellas close one by one, small collapses that sound like pages turned. The air warms by a degree, or it only feels that way because the wind steps aside. Either is fine. If you're drifting toward sleep, this is a gentle place to let your body settle, eyes half closed. Breath even, the wheel of fading glow behind the lids. If you're working, this is a good plateau, momentum held, attention steady, nothing too bright or too dark. Keep the cadence you found, light, step, breath, water. When I turn to the river again, I mark the next destination with a glance. The bridges wait with patient geometry, and the embankment beyond them promises a narrower soundscape, more iron, closer stone, the tiny echo of metal underfoot. I carry the South Bank softness with me as I start toward the approach, the lamps now forming a slimmer procession. The rain returns to its earlier steadiness, as if it had only paused to take stock. Good, the rhythm is back. I follow it toward the span. I leave the shelter of the trees and step onto the approach to the Golden Jubilee Bridges. The sound shifts at once less leaf and wood, more rain on cable and plate. Underfoot, the deck is a shallow drum. Each footfall gives a soft, metallic thrum that the weather immediately smooths. Stainless steel cables rise on either side like tall, quiet reeds, gathering drops along their lengths until gravity writes a single silver line downward. The river opens on both sides of the walkway, wide and sure, carrying the night downstream in patient pieces. As I climb to the span, the city redraws itself. Behind me, the London eye becomes a pale halo through the haze. Upstream, the clock face glows with softened gold. Downstream, the bridges stack in dim layers, each with its own underline of light. The rain is a little sharper up here, fewer obstructions, a cleaner fall. It stitches the air in steady diagonals, visible for a moment in the lamplight, then gone. I match my pace to the stitch. Step, stitch, step, stitch. An easy meter that expects nothing and keeps everything in order. Under the central line of the bridge, a train passes through Charing Cross, the sound traveling to us as a hush of moving steel. It's not loud. It's a felt note, a low, continuous presence that lifts and fades. Through a gap, I catch the briefest glimpse of windows' small rooms passing in a row, each with its own quiet story, each there and gone. The track hum settles back into rain. On the deck, puddles have formed in shallow ovals, and each one holds an upside-down London lamp's sky, a stripe of the river to carry a few steps before it breaks and reforms. Halfway across, I pause where the cables gather into a pale fan. Drops travel the strands like beads on invisible threads. From here, the Thames looks heavier but not slow. It wears the weather like a dark coat with bright pinstripes of reflection. A tourist boat downstream makes a turn. The wake reaches the bridge as a series of gentle ribs. They arrive beneath my feet, one after another, nudging the light along the water, leaving it smoother than before. The city breathes. The bridge breathes with it. The wind checks in, nothing stern, just a hand at the shoulder guiding the rain at a new angle. Fabric sighs. Umbrellas tilt. The cables sing a tone so fine it is almost imagined. A wire's whisper when wet air passes. I rest one palm on the handrail. The chill is precise, honest. Along the rail, droplets line up like punctuation, and every few seconds, one joins the river with a soft, decisive click. If you're here to sleep, you can keep time with that. Click, breath. If you're working, let the cable's geometry be your outline parallel lines, clear anchors, no clutter. Across the water, Embankment is a ribbon of lamps, each surrounded by a small meadow of light. Taxis move along the far road as red commas. The windows of the buildings seem closer in the rain, their rectangles softened into a warmer grammar. Between banks, the river collects all of it and edits it into a single legible sentence. I take a slow breath and let the sentence finish before adding the next step. A cyclist passes, tire print writing a clean, temporary line on the gloss. Their bell is a quick star, here and gone. A group of friends crosses in the opposite direction with that exaggerated quiet people adopt in rain voices close to their own chests. Laughter around it before it leaves the mouth. One of them gestures upstream. 4 heads turn at once. The gesture is absorbed by the weather and becomes simply another movement among many. The bridge keeps its balance effortlessly. Closer to the south pier, the deck plates change tone underfoot, a slightly higher bell of metal, then back again to velvet. The lamps here are a fraction nearer, their circles overlapping like careful stitches. Rain finds the joints in the paving and runs along them in thin, orderly streams. When a drop hits the cap of a cable clamp, it splits into finer drops that ring the metal and disappear. The whole system is a demonstration of calm engineering made intimate by weather. I stop again near the midpoint and look down between the slats. The river is busy at a scale that looks like stillness from above. Small whirls spin away from the piers and are immediately replaced. A long reflection of a lamp stretches until a ripple snaps it into bright beads. Then it reforms. A leaf rides by, a single quiet voyage, turning once, then again, then sliding under the bridge to continue into the next light. The city's attention is broad enough to hold all of this without comment. Another train crosses. This time the note is slightly different, fuller, as if the rain had tuned the track between the first and the second. The sound is a reassurance rather than a demand. The bridge doesn't resist it. It participates. If you're drifting toward sleep, this is the part where repetition becomes comfort. The regularity of structure, The return of tones, the inevitability of water doing what water does. If you're focused on a task, this is the clean line forward, no branching choices. No sharp corners, just span and span and span. Ahead, the northern stairs lead down toward Embankment. The lamps there burn a little warmer, caught by the pale stone and sent back as honey. The railings appear darker, almost black, their verticals crisp in the wet. From the deck above, the scene looks arranged for us. A narrow promenade beside the river, a line of benches shining with dew, planes of light and shadow laid in long, even strips. The rain will sound different down there, closer to stone, more present, a little more echo. I make for the descent, letting the pitch of the walkway guide my feet. The sound thickens one shade at a time, less cable, more masonry, less air, more wall. On the landing, the wind steps back and the rain's texture becomes finer. The steps themselves hold puddles and shallow scallops. The edges glimmer, perfect half-moons of silver. Hand on the rail, I take the last few down to the riverside, arriving in a narrower world, a place of lamplight, wet iron, and the steady voice of the Thames at closer range. At the base I pause. The bridge above speaks in its high-wired tones. The river at my side answers low. Between them, the embankment's lamps keep a calm middle. I look once more along the span cables, breathing, people walking, the rain doing fine work, and then turn to the path. This is where the city tightens its focus, where details come forward. Rivets and beads, plaques and puddles, the texture of stone drinking the weather. The rhythm we've kept will hold here too. I set off along the embankment, steps steady, breath even, the bridge receding into a soft V of metal and light behind me. Ahead, the first lamp waits, already shaping the next scene. The rain is reliable. The river is reliable. The night is generous with quiet. We'll carry all of that with us as we begin the riverside run. The riverside path gathers itself into a narrower grammar. Lamp, railstone, lamp, railstone. Each pool of light is its own small room, and between them the night settles like a soft hallway. The rain works closer here. It doesn't fall around us. It touches us. The sound deigns a pleasant and earnest rounder on the pavement, brighter on the iron, a delicate patter on the leaves of the plane trees that lean in from the street above. I move into the first circle of light and pause beside the railing. The iron is almost black, glossy with a fine skin of water. Droplets stand along the top rail in even intervals, tiny glass marbles, each holding an upside-down lamp, a slice of cloud, a trembling shard of the clock face far upstream. Every few seconds, a bead grows bold, leans, and lets go. The drop lands with a soft click against the stone coping and joins a thin, orderly rivulet running toward the river. Gravity here is courteous. Everything finds its place without hurry. The lamp itself hums faintly, a filament's low murmur wrapped in glass. Its light is warm honey against the wet masonry, laying out an oval that fades at the edges into velvet. In that oval, textures come forward, the grit of the paving, the shallow lip where water gathers, the fine pitting in the stone from years of weather. A small plaque on the rail wears a coat of droplets. The letters read more clearly when wet, as if the rain had polished each serif by hand. Footsteps join and pass soft-soled, careful then dissolve as they slip into the next pool of light. Farther along the road above, a taxi eases by. Its taillights stretch into the puddles as two bright threads break into beads and rejoin. The river at my side keeps a low, unbroken tone. Every few breaths, it climbs the stones by a finger as width and lets the water fall back in a damp sigh. The path feels like a channel carved exactly for this pace, measured, present, unforced. I rest my palms on the rail and look down. In the raked light, the water's surface shows its fine handwriting, tiny diagonals moving one way, wide commas drifting the other, all of it readable and none of it urgent. The reflection of a lamp elongates and narrows with each passing ripple, a golden stem that shakes and then stands straight again. When a light gust brushes the river, the stem becomes a handful of coins, and then a single line once more. Rain writes, wind edits, the Thames publishes. Moving on, I let each lamp set the rhythm. Arrive, notice, continue. In the second pool, a bench gleams like lacquer. Drops beat along the slats and gather beneath the armrest in a perfect teardrop that refuses to fall, holding the weight of a moment longer than it should, and then click, it joins the rest. If you're listening to sleep, this is a gentle exercise. Follow the forming bead, wait with it, hear the release, breathe on the release. If you're studying or working, let the lamps be natural milestones. Focus until the next oval of light, glance up, reset, and carry on. A gold shadow crosses the path, only the suggestion of wings tilted over the lamp's oval, and then fades into the mist. Somewhere behind the railing, water knocks softly at the ladder rungs fixed to the wall. The sound a sequence of small wooden clinks, even though the rungs are metal. Rain can make iron sound like wood and stone sound like paper. It rounds language until the whole place feels understandable by ear alone. The third lamp shows a new detail. Rain threading from the crown of a tree branch in fine strands, individual filaments that glow as they pass the light and then vanish. A bicycle rolls by with a whispering chain. The rider's jacket is dark and slick with water, shoulders beaded like a seal's back. Their tires write two faint arcs that the rain erases in seconds. Behind me, the bridge sends a quiet wear song on the wind. Ahead, the path narrows and then gently widens again, the ovals overlapping for a few steps and then separating, like the breath expanding and settling. I stop to listen to the small echoes here, how a drop on the rail answers itself in stone, how a footstep returns from the wall at a lower pitch, how the river offers a cushion that keeps any sound from being sharp. The city has lowered its voice to something almost conversational. Even a distant siren, filtered by dusk and water, sounds like a thought you let come and go, rather than a demand. In the next light, I find a shallow puddle shaped like a crescent. Its surface is clear enough to make a mirror of the lamp, the rail, and a thin wedge of sky. Rain freckles that mirror in neat polka dots. When a stray gust ripples the water, the dots become dashes and then reconnect. Morse code for everything is fine. I step around the crescent, not to avoid getting wet. We relong past that, but to keep the little composition intact for the next passerby. The smell along the embankment is particular tonight. Whetstone. A faint mineral sweetness from the river, the clean metallic cool of iron washed fresh. When a bus rolls along the far road, a breath of warm diesel tries to join the mix and is immediately softened by the rain. Nothing lingers too long. The air keeps moving, honest and simple. A small flight of steps dips toward a lower platform. I take it and notice how the sound collects in the corner, more present, more intimate. A boat's wake arrives as a gentle lift under the solace, then subsides. On the wall, trickles arrange themselves into a delicate fan, each thread taking a slightly different path to the same ledge. The stone glows darker where the threads pass and lighter where they don't. It is a drawing that redraws itself endlessly. Back up on the main path, the lamps continue their patient procession. I pass a pair of friends walking shoulder to shoulder under a single umbrella. Their voices are hushed but cheerful, the kind of tone people use when the weather has given them a reason to speak close. They drift out of my lamp and into theirs, silhouettes that own their quiet. A runner comes through a minute later, footfalls rapid and light, the jacket's fabric making a fast, fine rain of its own. The two rhythms cross without conflict. The scene absorbs both. At one of the wider ovals, I pause again beside a plaque that names the river stairs leading down to a slip. The letters are simple and dignified, the sort that were cut to be read in any weather. Tonight they are perfect, edges darkened by moisture, faces gleaming. Water beads in the tiny hollows and makes miniature lenses over half the words. I read them slowly, as if they were a line of poetry, and then let the lamp erase the emphasis and return the wall to ordinary stone. If you're drifting towards sleep, this stretch is a gentle slope. Lamp after lamp, click after click, the river a long vowel under everything. Your breath can copy the pattern long, even unbroken. If you're working, take the same pattern and place a small goal in each oval of light. When you reach the next lamp, notice one detail, then return to the task. The city will keep time for you. I pass a kiosk shuttered for the night, its metal ribs bright with water. The canopy above throws a thin waterfall from one corner. It lands in a plastic tub with a precise resonant note, a droplet bell. The rate is steady enough to be counted. I don't count it. I let it count the moment for me. Beyond the kiosk, the path curves gently inland. The lamps guide the turn with overlapping pools, and the railing gives way to short sections broken by stone posts, each topped with a small crown of drops. The embankment's rhythm has done its work. Attention broadened, pace established, edges softened. Up ahead, the path will angle away from the river toward streets that lead to Covent Garden. The sound will trade a little water for a little echo, a little iron for a little brick. Before we leave, I rest one more time with both palms on the rail, eyes on the dark water and the gold stitched across it. Rain beads press cool into my skin and vanish when I lift my hands. The lamps keep their ovals, patient as ever. The city offers one more quiet, and we take it. When I turn from the river, the world narrows to the wet geometry of streets and arcades. The reflections will change character there, less long and liquid, more clustered and bright. Footsteps will sound closer. Umbrellas will drum against canvas and wood. It will be a different kind of calm, enclosed and human, the kind that markets and covered walkways are made for. We'll carry the river's steadiness with us into that space and let the rain do the rest. Streets narrow away from the river and gather into a hush. The sound of the Thames fades to a memory, and the city trades open water for stone and canvas. Covent Garden arrives as a sequence of covered walkways, cast iron columns, pale stone, and glass built to keep the weather close but kind. Rain here becomes articulate. It finds edges and rhythms, a patient tick along the lip of a gutter, a finer stitch where it threads the ribs of an awning, a soft patter on the glazing overhead that rounds every corner into comfort. I step under the first arcade and feel the air change. It's still wet, but it is organized now drops, gathering at the eaves and letting go in punctual notes. The flagstones darken to slate and make mirrors of the shop fronts. Gold lettering on glass multiplies into the puddles and returns upright when you move. Inside the oval of each lamp, the world gets specific. The brush of a coat sleeve, the slow closing of a door, the neat geometry of tables stacked for the night. The lamp's light is warmer here, stirred by stone and wood, the way tea deepens in a ceramic cup. Canvas awnings hold their small reservoirs. At their corners, thin streams form, steady as metronomes tap. Tap, tap landing into metal trays or onto the patient flagstone. A shopkeeper rolls down the shutter with care. The sound travels like a zipper an aisle away and then dissolves into rain. A busker packs a violin with practiced hands. The last note he drew hangs a little longer beneath the arcade. Then the case clicks shut and the note joins the general hush. He smiles at no one in particular and walks into the weather, which accepts him and smooths the edges of his steps. The covered market opens like a calm cathedral to practical things. The ironwork overhead is dark with beads of water. The panes of the roof are speckled and luminous, laying a soft constellation over the hall. Stalls have already tucked themselves in. A few strings of lights remain and glow in modest chains above empty counters. The floor here is a patchwork of stone, each rectangle a shade deeper under rain. Footsteps sound closer, friendlier rounded by the canopy, returned without echo. If you're listening to sleep, this is a good room to let your breath widen and your shoulders settle. If you're working, follow the measured drip at the corner of the awning and let it keep time for you. I pass an open doorway where warmth gathers in a square, the smell of coffee fading but still present, a note of toasted sugar and wood. Inside, a barista wipes a counter in slow, even arcs. The cloth makes a rhythm that suits the rain-soft, regular, complete. On the glass, condensation blurs a handwritten sign into a gentle wave. A chair is turned upside down onto a table. Another chair joins it. The night is tidying itself. Under the long gallery, the columns make a perfect beat. Light, shadow enough to pace the mind. At each bay, a little scene. A display of books arranged by color. Their spines darker and more saturated for being wet at the edges. A window of scarves quiet with pattern. A florist's buckets rinsed clean by the day's weather leaves bright as if polished. In one corner, a drain mouth drinks a steady thread and answers with a hollow wooden note, although it is iron rain's sleight of hand. The cobbles of the piazza hold their own voice. Where the arcade ends, I step out for a moment and hear the finer sand of rain on stone, the tiny skitter of drops across uneven ground. The rounder click where water finds a joint and falls through. Puddles here are small and closely set. They catch red from a distant sign and blue from a nearer lamp, and the colors cross without arguing. Umbrellas are small planets moving with their own gravity. When two pass close, their canopies kiss with the softest thud and part again, polite weather in a polite square. Back beneath cover, I pause where two awnings meet at a corner. The seams gather threads of water like a loom. Every few seconds, a droplet swells at the stitched edge, hesitates, and releases a tiny, perfect surrender. If you're drifting towards sleep, you can follow that bead from forming to falling and let go with it. If you're staying awake, use it as a reset. Watch once, breathe once, continue. Somewhere above, rain taps the glass roof in clusters, then thins, then returns in new patterns. The sound reorganizes thought without demanding attention. A pair of friends walk past, sharing a hood, voices close and bright. Their laughter is the kind that doesn't travel. A small circle that keeps them warm and vanishes at the edge of the arcade. A delivery bike glides through, tire noise softened to felt, headlight leaving a moving ellipse on the wet floorboards of a kiosk. At the far end of the hall, a stairwell descends to a lower terrace. Water threads the iron handrail and collects at the bottom in a shallow dish someone set to catch it. The dish answers each drop with a bell-like ping, soft and precise. I linger to hear the spacing, not perfect, not random weather's version of free time. The terrace smells faintly of wet stone and something green, as if the plants in the pots were exhaling after a long drink. I climb back to the main arcade and step into another run of light. The repetition here is the comfort, arch after arch, awning after awning, each with its own small difference that only shows itself if you go slowly. A plaque on a column holds a short history in a few lines. Rain beads gather along the engraving and make the letters look newly cut. A lantern swings 1 degree and returns. A chalkboard lists a menu that tonight is only a quotation from the day. Beyond the covered stretch, the square opens again and the sky resumes its part. But the covered walk has imprinted its calm, organized sound, contained light, edges rounded by fabric and glass. We'll take that order forward as we turn toward the small lanes that branch from the piazza, streets that hold puddles like pocket mirrors and collect neon into patient pools. The rain is steady. The city is generous. The walk. The arcade loosens its arm and releases me into the open piazza. Rain resumes its wider voice, a fine, even fabric falling from a sky the color of pewter. Cobblestones receive it with a bright, close patter. Every stone holds a slightly different note, so the square becomes a quiet instrument played by weather alone. Light spills out from shop fronts and cafes in rectangular pools, amber, tea-colored, welcoming, then doubles itself in the shallow mirrors of puddles. People move through those mirrors like slow brushstrokes, their shapes lengthening and folding as they pass. Umbrellas drift across the square as if guided by an unseen tide. When two come close, the canopies kiss with a soft thud, then separate and continue with practiced grace. A street sign throws a steady blue into a long slick on the cobbles. A distant bar hangs a red that rides lower, richer, the color of polished fruit. At the center, a stall's canopy sheds water at a precise corner tap. Tap, tap onto a crate, the note round enough to count, gentle enough to forget. If you're listening to sleep, allow that tap to lead your breath. If you're working, use it to mark the shift into a focused stretch. Tap, read, tap, write. I cross the piazza at an easy angle and slip into a side alley where the city narrows and brightens. Here the walls are closer and the rain is more articulate thin threads from windowsills. A quick skip along painted doors, the sharper tick where water finds the metal of the latch. Brickwork darkens to velvet. Posters on a notice board drink the weather and deepen in tone. The paper edges lift by a millimeter and settle. A small vent exhales steam that folds softly into the mist and returns the scent of bread and something sweet from a bakery already closed. Neon finds these lanes the way a river finds channels. A sign half a block away, cherry red, serif spreads its color along the wet paving in a ribbon that flickers when footsteps cross it. Another sign throws a quiet aquamarine that collects under a window, makes a shallow pool of light, then slides toward a drain. The drain answers with a tiny, regular gurgle, just enough to be noticed if you stop, not enough to insist if you keep walking. The alley's soundstage is intimate now. Close footsteps, a zipper drawn up, the soft drum of rain on a bin lid, the quick hush as you pass beneath a hanging balcony. A delivery bike noses out of a doorway and pauses. The rider looks left, then right, the headlight painting an ellipse across the stones. When they move on, their tires leave two pale arcs that fade as the rain reclaims the surface. A cat crosses from one dry threshold to another without touching the open ground. Its shadow on the wet stone is a darker, slicker cat that dissolves as soon as it reaches shelter. Somewhere above, a window is cracked open. The sound of a kettle clicks off and a spoon taps the side of a mug twice, then once, then silence again. I pass beneath a string of bulbs that stay on year-round. Tonight they are tiny moons, each with its own halo fine enough to see the rain as thin diagonal lines for a breath. The bulbs reflect in a puddle that fits between two cobbles like a secret. When a drop lands, the chain becomes a ring of stars, then a comet's tail, then returns to a straight, patient line. The alley bends and the sound shifts, less traffic bleed, more roof drip, a whisper of wind threading past a fire escape. Halfway down, a pub window glows with sincerity rather than volume. Condensation fogs the lower panes. A finger has drawn a smiling oval in the mist, and it is slowly softening back into cloud. Inside, a handful of silhouettes lean over tables. The door opens once. A warm pocket of sound steps outside, clink, murmur, laugh, and the rain wraps it at once, rounding it down to texture. The door closes with a seal that sounds almost like a breath being taken. Amber recollects itself in the glass. Outside, the pub's hanging sign swings 1 degree and returns. The lane narrows further, then rises a step. Water threads along a groove beside the stairs, makes a delicate fan where the angle changes, and then chooses a side. The brick on the right wall wears a thin, shimmering film that breaks into long, transparent teardrops at the mortar joints. If you're drifting towards sleep, you can follow one teardrop from forming to falling and let it carry the last of your wakefulness with it. If you're here to focus, notice two details, say, the pattern of the brick and the sound of the groove, then bring your eyes back to the page or the task. The lane will hold the rest. Beyond the step, a tiny courtyard appears, just big enough for a park scooter, 2 planters. and a door painted a deep green that looks almost black in this weather. The scooter's seat is a smooth, glossy arc. Raindrops gather along the crest and pause, lined like notes waiting their turn. Somewhere to the left, behind an iron gate, water falls in a thin sheet from a roof edge. Too slender to be a proper fall, too steady to be called a drip. It makes a veil sound, a soft hiss that blurs edges and shortens distance. The courtyard smells briefly of wet rosemary and cold stone. I leave by the far corner where the alley re-enters the weave of streets. The pavement widens by a shoulder, then tightens. Light shifts from amber to pale to bluish, depending on the doorways I pass. A shutter is half down, its slats jeweled with beads. Every few seconds, one bead swells to the courage needed and lets go, clicking to the sill below, the note 2 octaves lower than the awning drips of the piazza. Sound stacks here in layers, all of them soft. Surface rain, drip rhythms, footfalls, distant tires ribboning water from a street beyond. A neon noodle bowl blinks once and holds steady, its white becoming a gentle cream under rain. The chopstick's reflection in a puddle is 2 thin lines that waver with each drop. Next door, a record shop has left a single lamp on over a display of covers that glow like small stained glass windows in the lane's muted chapel. Water beads along the vinyl in the window and turns the printed gloss into something almost liquid. A sign taped to the glass says, "Back soon," in a hand that will be true tomorrow. At the lane's end, the city hints at a wider space ahead, the faint blend of voices. A taller wash of light, the suggestion of open sky beyond the next corner. The rain doesn't change. It just continues being itself, which is the best kind of company for a walk like this. I pause under a narrow overhang and watch the alley work. Water choosing paths, light choosing surfaces, sound choosing volumes. Nothing is wasted. Everything returns as calm. When I step out, I carry the lane's organization with me, the neatness of its textures, the polite way it handles color, the way it makes room for small stories. The route will widen now, moving us toward a square where voices gather in a softer chorus and light lifts from puddles and broader sheets. For the moment, the alley gives us one more drip, one more reflection, one more breath, and then lets us go. The lane widens by degrees, gathering more light, more color, and a low, friendly hum. Rain keeps its steady handwriting on the stones, but the city's voice changes, register quieter than a crowd, fuller than a side street. Posters begin to appear behind glass, faces lit from within, titles breathing through a film of condensation. Each window throws a soft rectangle onto the pavement. Each rectangle doubles in a puddle and wavers when the drops arrive. Umbrellas move in small constellations. They tilt and correct, a choreography learned by the whole city on nights like this. A line forms outside a cinema entrance, calm as a fog. Jackets shine one shade darker where the fabric has taken the weather and decided to keep it. The door opens and a warm pocket of sound steps out, murmur, laugh, the quiet rattle of paper, and the rain rounds it down to texture before it can travel. The door closes. The pocket returns to the room. I keep to the edge of the walk, letting the shop fronts do their work. Amber here, milk glass there, a slow pulse of blue from a screen that has turned the rain into watercolor. A neon arrow points toward the square and smears itself across the stones. When a step crosses the smear, the arrow becomes a river for 3 seconds, then remembers it is an arrow again. A vendor under a canopy pours water from a pooling corner. The arc lands in a bucket with a rounded note. Tap, breath. Tap, breath. If you're listening to sleep, let that note be your metronome. If you're working, place the next unit of focus between one tap and the next. The air shifts, a faint sweetness of caramel from somewhere nearby, a thread of coffee cooling, the mineral-based note of wet stone that has been the night's constant. Posters on a stand rotate once one frame becomes another, and the thin motor hum disappears into rain. A cyclist passes without hurry, tires drawing pale lines that evaporate almost as soon as they appear. Two friends share hood and move as one creature. Their conversation is close and round, the sound of people who have time. Edges of the square announce themselves before the space opens, light lifting in a larger sheet, voices gathering into a single soft chorus, the particular echo of rain on broad paving. I pause beneath a shallow awning and watch the threshold do its quiet magic. Water threads from the awning's lip and clean, even strings, beads forming and falling, as reliable as seconds. A flyer on the wall has shrunk the weather. The ink is richer and the paper has become velvet. Someone has circled a showtime in blue. The circle holds. I step out and feel the sound flatten and deepen at once. Leicester's glow is not loud tonight. It is a warm cloud above wet stone, a steady light built from many small sources rather than one. Screens at the far side smooth their images through the rain until they look painted. Fields of color without edges, slow-moving faces softened into kindness. A fountain speaks in hush water on water, rain and water, and raises a fine mist that meets the fine mist falling down. Between them, air becomes velvet. Footsteps here have a particular pace, not quick, not aimless. The speed of people who are sure they're going somewhere, but happy to be delayed by weather. A child in a bright coat hops carefully between the darkest stones, and the coat copies itself in each puddle it finds. The parent's hand lifts, and both figures become a single strong shape for a moment, then separate again into two. A bus door opens at the far edge. 5 people step down in sequence. The door closes. The bus eases away. The rain edits the scene back to simple. I skirt the square rather than crossing it, staying within arm's reach of glossy tiles and glass. A cinema's marquee sends a honey light into the rain. The bulbs are small suns, each with its own halo where drops become briefly visible before they vanish. A poster's clear sleeve gathers a curve of water at the bottom. The curve grows to the size of a thumbnail, then releases with a soft tear sound and leaves the sleeve clean for the next. The rhythm is unhurried, release, rest, release, and it invites your breath to match. If you're drifting to sleep, choose one reflection, say, a marquee upside down in a puddle, and let your attention hold it until it dissolves under the drops. When it reforms, you'll already be halfway to dreaming. If you're focused on work, let the square's soft chorus become your room tone. Notice the layered sounds: surface rain, fountain hush. Voices folded small, and pick one detail to acknowledge every minute, like touching a bookmark, then return to the task. A taxi slides past the perimeter. Its tail lights paint twin ribbons that bend over a ripple and snap into beads, then stretch clean again. A busker in a doorway plucks a guitar string once to test a tuning, decides against a second note, and zips the case with a careful hand. The zipper makes a neat silver sound and is gone. A couple under one umbrella stop to read a poster, their shoulders touching. The umbrella becomes a small room, a new ceiling to a quiet conversation. The square offers a final kindness before we leave it, a breeze that is not cold, just organizing a pair of leaves. Tumbling in its wake like coins, the rain choosing for a moment to become mist, and then remembering to be rain again. I breathe once, long and even, and the city breathes with me. Light, water, stone, voice, nothing insists, everything invites. At the corner, a narrow street leans away into a mesh of lanes. Signs stack higher there, closer together. The light will be nearer to hand. The rain will find new instruments, bins, fire escapes, painted doors. The sound will change too, more echo, more cloth, a little more neon pressing itself gently into puddles. We carry the square's hush with us as we step toward that texture, the murmurs fading into a softer band behind. The path to Soho begins with a small turn and a modest slope. Water chooses channels along the curb, threads themselves together, separates, and repeats. A doorway lamp chalks a circle on the stones. The circle moves an inch when the wind remembers to exist. I place my foot at the edge of the circle and think of it as a threshold. On the other side lies a different calm closer, more human-scaled, lit by low signs and narrow windows. I take the step. The rain stays faithful. The night stays generous. The walk keeps its pace. The lane widens by degrees, gathering more light, more color, and a low, friendly hum. Rain keeps its steady handwriting on the stones, but the city's voice changes, registered quieter than a crowd, fuller than a side street. Posters begin to appear behind glass, faces lit from within, titles breathing through a film of condensation. Each window throws a soft rectangle onto the pavement. Each rectangle doubles in a puddle and wavers when the drops arrive. Umbrellas move in small constellations. They tilt and correct, a choreography learned by the whole city on nights like this. A line forms outside a cinema entrance, calm as a thought. Jackets shine one shade darker where the fabric has taken the weather and decided to keep it. The door opens and a warm pocket of sound steps out, murmur, laugh, the quiet rattle of paper, and the rain rounds it down to texture before it can travel. The door closes. The pocket returns to the room. I keep to the edge of the walk, letting the shop fronts do their work, amber here, milk glass there, a slow pulse of blue from a screen that has turned the rain into watercolor. A neon arrow points toward the square and smears itself across the stones. When a step crosses the smear, the arrow becomes a river for 3 seconds, then remembers it is an arrow again. A vendor under a canopy pours water from a pooling corner. The arc lands in a bucket with a rounded note. Tap, breath. Tap, breath. If you're listening to sleep, let that note be your metronome. If you're working, place the next unit of focus between one tap and the next. The air shifts, a faint sweetness of caramel from somewhere nearby, a thread of coffee cooling, the mineral-based note of wet stone that has been the night's constant. Posters on a stand rotate once one frame becomes another, and the thin motor hum disappears into rain. A cyclist passes without hurry, tires drawing pale lines that evaporate almost as soon as they appear. 2 friends share hood and move as one creature. Their conversation is close and round, the sound of people who have time. Edges of the square announce themselves before the space opens, light lifting in a larger sheet, voices gathering into a single soft chorus, the particular echo of rain on broad paving. I pause beneath a shallow awning and watch the threshold do its quiet magic. Water threads from the awning's lip and clean, even strings, beads forming and falling, as reliable as seconds. A flyer on the wall has drunk the weather. The ink is richer and the paper has become velvet. Someone has circled a showtime in blue. The circle holds. I step out and feel the sound flatten and deepen at once. Leicester's glow is not loud tonight. It is a warm cloud above wet stone, a steady light built from many small sources rather than one. Screens at the far side smooth their images through the rain until they look painted. Fields of color without edges, slow-moving faces softened into kindness. A fountain speaks in hush water on water, rain and water, and raises a fine mist that meets the fine mist falling down. Between them, air becomes velvet. Footsteps here have a particular pace, not quick, not aimless. The speed of people who are sure they're going somewhere, but happy to be delayed by weather. A child in a bright coat hops carefully between the darkest stones, and the coat copies itself in each puddle it finds. The parent's hand lifts, and both figures become a single strong shape for a moment, then separate again into 2. A bus door opens at the far edge. 5 people step down in sequence. The door closes. The bus eases away. The rain edits the scene back to simple. I skirt the square rather than crossing it, staying within arm's reach of glossy tiles and glass. A cinema's marquee sends a honey light into the rain. The bulbs are small suns, each with its own halo where drops become briefly visible before they vanish. A poster's clear sleeve gathers a curve of water at the bottom. The curve grows to the size of a thumbnail, then releases with a soft tear sound and leaves the sleeve clean for the next. The rhythm is unhurried, release, rest, release, and it invites your breath to match. If you're drifting to sleep, choose one reflection, say, a marquee upside down in a puddle, and let your attention hold it until it dissolves under the drops. When it reforms, you'll already be halfway to dreaming. If you're focused on work, let the square's soft chorus become your room tone. Notice the layered sounds: surface rain, fountain hush. Voices folded small, and pick one detail to acknowledge every minute, like touching a bookmark, then return to the task. A taxi slides past the perimeter. Its tail lights paint twin ribbons that bend over a ripple and snap into beads, then stretch clean again. A busker in a doorway plucks a guitar string once to test a tuning, decides against a second note, and zips the case with a careful hand. The zipper makes a neat silver sound and is gone. A couple under one umbrella stop to read a poster, their shoulders touching. The umbrella becomes a small room, a new ceiling to a quiet conversation. The square offers a final kindness before we leave it, a breeze that is not cold, just organizing a pair of leaves. Tumbling in its wake like coins, the rain choosing for a moment to become mist, and then remembering to be rain again. I breathe once, long and even, and the city breathes with me. Light, water, stone, voice, nothing insists, everything invites. At the corner, a narrow street leans away into a mesh of lanes. Signs stack higher there, closer together. The light will be nearer to hand. The rain will find new instruments, bins, fire escapes, painted doors. The sound will change too, more echo, more cloth, a little more neon pressing itself gently into puddles. We carry the square's hush with us as we step toward that texture, the murmurs fading into a softer band behind. The path to Soho begins with a small turn and a modest slope. Water chooses channels along the curb, threads themselves together, separates, and repeats. A doorway lamp chalks a circle on the stones. The circle moves an inch when the wind remembers to exist. I place my foot at the edge of the circle and think of it as a threshold. On the other side lies a different calm closer, more human-scaled, lit by low signs and narrow windows. I take the step. The rain stays faithful. The night stays generous. The walk keeps its pace. The arch is a soft threshold between rains. On one side, Soho's brick and neon. On the other, a field of red lanterns breathing warm light into the weather. Beads form along each globe's lacquered skin, line up, and fall tiny sparks turned into drops by gravity. Strings of lanterns cross the street in patient rows, the rain turning the chords into dark lines on wet paper. Below, the paving stones are a shallow river of color, red from characters on signs, gold from door frames, a tea-colored wash from windows that promise soup and steam. The first breath here is different. Ginger and star anise lifted by warm air, a thread of sesame, the mineral cool of rain folding it all down to a whisper, a kitchen vent sighs. A cloud of steam rolls from a side door and dissolves into mist. In that brief envelope of heat, the rain becomes finer, almost silk, then resumes its even texture when the air cools. Chopsticks click once behind glass. A wok answers with a soft sizzle that never turns sharp weather smooths everything to kindness. Jared Street narrows the sky and amplifies the glow. Wooden screens and painted lintels hold a darker sheen in the rain. Gold leaf deepens where water rests and moves on. A line forms under canopies, umbrellas touching like polite bows. A server steps out to wipe a menu case with 3 gentle strokes. The cloth writes a clean oval in the condensation, and the characters beneath sharpen as if the alphabet had taken a breath. Drops thread from the awning edge in perfect intervals, tap, tap, metronome for walking, reading, breathing. A window holds a neat row of bamboo steamers. The glass is fogged from the waist down. A fingertip has drawn a circle that is already softening back to cloud. Each steamer lid wears a few bright beads that refuse to fall, proud of their patience. Inside, silhouettes lift and set, the rhythm of hands that know what to do. A rose duck hangs near another pane, its lacquer catching the lamp and sending the color into the puddle below as a warm ribbon. The ribbon wavers when a drop lands and then straightens, ready to be admired again. If you're drifting towards sleep, this is a gentle place to let go. Count the lanterns in one string until the numbers turn into light. Follow one bead as it forms, leans, and falls. Let the sizzle soften into a hush that fills the room. If you're studying or working, choose a simple cadence. One paragraph per awning, one idea per pool of light. The street will keep time with taps and distant sizzling while you focus on the wine in front of you. A delivery rider rolls past slowly, the insulated box beating like a beetle's shell. Tires whisper, leaving two pale arcs that fade as the rain reclaims the stone. A family shares a single umbrella. The smallest hand reaches toward a lantern and stops an inch short, as if touching would startle the light. From an upstairs window, a paper cut out a pair of carved glows against frosted glass. Water crawls along the sash in threads, so fine you can only see them where they cross the lamp's hello. I stop beneath a canopy where 2 rows of lanterns cross. The light here is a steady honey, and the rain shows itself as diagonal lines for an instant before vanishing. A plastic strip curtain breathes at a doorway. Each lift and fall reveals a rectangle of warmth within bowls, steam, rounded voices, then closes. The curtain's lower edge gathers drops until it writes a short fringe that releases, reforms, releases. The fringe keeps it perfect, unambitious rhythm. A small market window displays mandarins, their skins shining with the natural glaze the rain has deepened. Cardboard boxes under the ledge gather clean, regular taps. The sound lands with the soft solidity of a wooden instrument being played by weather. A red envelope pinned to a post has drunk its share of rain and turned basalt dark, except for the gold character in the center, which glows stubbornly through the moisture. Nearby, a lucky cat lifts its arm within the glass. Up, down, slow as a breath. Steam bends light in kind ways. A kitchen door opens and a pale cloud pushes into the street, softening the edges of everything it passes. Characters on a sign lose their corners for a heartbeat, then recover them. The cloud carries a chorus of small sounds, ladles touching bowls, porcelain set gently on wood, a spoon tapping the rim of a pot twice in thought. Rain folds those sounds into the general hush and hands them back as texture. I pass a shrine tucked between 2 doorways, a red niche with candles and a small offering plate. The candles hold their flames low and steady. Wax gathers in careful teardrops that mirror the rain outside. Someone has left a few coins. Water beads on the metal and makes tiny cold suns. A bell string hangs nearby. A draft moves it half an inch, enough to make a bright idea of a sound rather than the sound itself. Even here, everything is measured. Banners above the street collect their own geometry of drops. At the stitch lines, water follows thread, not gravity. It travels sideways for an inch before remembering to fall. On the gutter's lip, larger beads perform slower arithmetic. Gather, swell, consider, release. A passerby lowers a red parasol, then changes their mind and lifts it again, the fabric popping and settling with a friendly, domestic sound. The parasol picks up lantern light and turns it into a moving ember. The pavement here is a palimpsest of reflections. Characters repeat upside down. Lanterns stretch into long beads. A neon noodle bowl turns into 2 clean lines that waver with each drop. When a gust arrives, the lines become calligraphy, then resolve back into symbols as the air rests. The city writes and rewrites itself without hurry. If you're working, it's a good reminder. You can revise calmly. The meaning remains. If you're falling asleep, the writing can become a lullaby you don't need to read. Further along, a baker props a door and slides a tray to cool near the threshold. The steam lifts and disappears in less than a meter, leaving the smell of sesame and sugar soft by rain. A simple exchange happens here. Heat for weather, weather for heat, and no one keeps score. The tray ticks once as it settles. In the glow of the doorway, the tick is enough to be a complete sentence. At a corner, the street turns and the lantern strings run into a dimmer patch where the sky feels closer. A dragon carved along a lintel darkens to almost black. Water pools in the curve of its scale pattern and drops from the jaw as if the carving were breathing. Beneath it, a menu board lists soups in a hand that is neat even after the rain. A small ledge below the board holds 3 puddles arranged accidentally like a constellation. A drop lands in the first, then the third, then the second, and the pattern repeats often enough to feel intentional. Chinatown's tempo is precise without being stern. Every sound is wrapped in steam and rain. Every light carries a halo that turns edges kind. I walk as slowly as the street permits, letting each crossing lantern string be a bar line, each awning trip a beat. The neighborhood gives out warmth in small, continual notes, the pulse of a rice cooker behind a wall, the push and sigh of a door, the memory of a walk sizzles smoothed by air. We reach the far arch and with it another threshold, this time back toward the broader blaze of Piccadilly Circus. Beyond the gate, screens will paint the rain in larger fields. Regent Street will curve like a wet ribbon under its cream facades. The glow will shift from lantern warmth to marquee light, from close steam to open air. The rain keeps faith with all of it. So, do we? The square arrives as a low, steady brightness screens, breathing through rain until pictures turn into fields of color. Nothing is sharp, everything is kind. The Eros fountain hushes in the center, water on water folding into the same soft fabric as the weather. Footsteps spread out across the broad, paving in a shared rhythm. Not quick, not idle, the pace of people who are somewhere but also here. Rain edits the light. Reds become wine dark, blues turn to ink, whites drift toward cream. The paving carries it all like paper given a wash. Reflections lengthen, meet, and separate. When a drop strikes a puddle just right, the ripple travels through an upside-down billboard face and makes it smile for a second, then think, then smooth back into calm. Umbrellas pass in constellations, black, navy, a sudden yellow tilting and correcting, tilting and correcting. A choreography the city learned long ago. A bus door opens, soft hydraulic breath, precise chime, slippers of water from the step. 5 passengers descend, each adding a brief portrait to the glow, then folding into the square. When the door closes, the sound seals with the neatness of a book shut on a ribbon. The bus eases off, tires turning rain into lace behind them. The lace settles, and the square resumes its sentence. The fountain's basin wears a perfect polish. Raindrops stipple the surface with close beads. The statue above holds a steadier shine, dark metal reading as velvet under the cloud. If you're here to sleep, this is a gentle lull, let your breath echo the fountain. Gather, pour, gather, pour. If you're working, imagine the square as your desk lamp. Diffuse, dependable, bright enough to see clearly but never glaring. I drift along the edge, staying in the wide shadow where shop fronts gather. Under a canopy, water threads from one fixed point, the stream landing in a bucket with a round, woody note. Tap. Tap, tap. The bucket is generous. It misses nothing. Across the pavement, the screens smear a slow river of color into a long puddle. Shoes cross the river and the colors part, then close again around each heel. The puddle keeps its patience. At the mouth of Regent Street, the city changes register. The curve is a long bow drawn in stone. Facades in cream and gray collect rain and turn it into polish. Lamps run in a measured procession down the center line ovals of warm honey on wet road, evenly spaced like calm thoughts. The building's colonnades keep a steady beat arch, window, cornice exact without being strict. The rain lowers the volume, raises the quality. I step into the arc. The first meters feel like entering a gallery after a cinema. Screens give way to masonry. Color fields become light itself. The roadway has a graphite sheen and takes reflections like lacquer. A black cab glides by. Its roof bears a thin sheet of water that breaks at the rear into bright beads. Tail lights draw two red ribbons that bow and recover over a shallow ripple. The cab turns the curve with a cat's confidence and disappears, leaving the ribbons to relax into the road. Regent Street is restraint made visible. Window displays glow behind glass with a patient interior light. Nothing shouts. On the paving, rain writes small diagonals that become visible only where lamp halos catch them lines. Then nothing, then lines again. The arch rhythm in the facade steadies the mind by example. If you're drifting towards sleep, let the arches count themselves for you. If you're working, use each lamp pool as a waypoint. One paragraph per pool, glance up, continue. Beneath an arcade, the sound changes key. Drops meet stone with a rounder note, the sort of consonant that makes a language easy to learn by ear. A plaque set into the wall reads clearer when wet, each serif freshly chiseled by weather. The handrail along the shallow stair is a cool line under my palm. Droplets pace themselves along the top and release in orderly turns. Somewhere deeper under the arcade, a door opens and closes, and the room's warmth steps out for a breath, then returns. The curve ahead narrows the distance between lamps, so the ovals overlap into a soft runway. Reflections stack in layers, lamps, windows, a slice of sign, then unstack as footsteps rearrange them. A bus arrives at a dignified speed. The upper deck offers small plays, a head against glass, a hand scrolling, a reader turning a page. The lower deck shows shoulders and coats, a wool hat gathering beads at its rim, a scarf wrung with rain. The bus slows, pauses, breathes, and moves on. The road sews up the seam it left. I keep to the inner edge, close to the colonnade. Cornices shed rain in delicate chains where ornaments give it something to choose. At the pilaster bases, puddles gather in neat crescents that mirror the lamps like trimmed moons. A shop attendant draws a squeegee across a pane, top to bottom, one clean stroke. The pane clears and fogs again in a minute. The attendant smiles, repeats the stroke, accepts the weather's reply. The ritual is calming on both sides of the glass. Farther along, the curve offers a perspective trick. The lamps appear to meet and then, with each step, move apart again. It's a controlled promise of distance. A cyclist rings a single note and passes under a halo. The droplets thrown from the tires sparkle and vanish before they touch anything but road. From above, a balcony drain assigns a steady drip to a bronze plaque. The plaque answers with a soft ping pitched low by water gathered at its lip. A listener could score the street with dots and ties. Regent's palette is a study in reduced means. Cream facades, black rails, graphite road, honey light. Rain subtracts noise and leaves the structure. If you need rest, that subtraction is your invitation. Let the mind copy the street fewer colors, clearer forms, one line after another. If you need focus, let the curve itself be your outline. It insists on continuity, and your work can borrow that insistence. I pause at a minor crossing where the zebra stripes gleam like satin ribbons laid over stone. Each stripe holds a different set of reflections, lamp, window, sky, and the rain stitches them together. A couple waits under one umbrella, shoulders nearly touching, then crosses with a small shared stride that keeps the umbrella balanced. The umbrella's edge collects a row of pearls, and then, at the halfway point, releases them all at once in a brief silver fringe. The couple doesn't notice, the street does. Between two shops, a short arcade offers a pocket of different air quieter, close-grained. The ceiling panels wear a patient grid of droplets. The floor is a darker mirror where the grid repeats upside down. A guard in a dark coat strolls through with unhurried heels. Click, hush, click, hush. When he reaches the rain again, the heel becomes a softer note, and the arcade returns to its grid. Outside, the city continues to make a careful argument for calm. Back on the main curve, the facades lift slightly, the road opens a fraction, and the lamps recede in a graceful taper. Buses and cabs compose themselves without being asked. Air moves just enough to remind the lanterns to breathe. Where a flag hangs from a pole, rain draws tight lines along the fabric's lower edge before letting go in steady drips. The flag darkens one shade, then two, then holds, color truer for being wet. If you're drifting to sleep, let Regent Street become a lullaby of architecture. Arch, arch, arch. Lamp, lamp, lamp. Curve, curve, curve. Breathe in the honey light. Breathe out the graphite road. If you're studying, plant your next idea at the farthest lamp you can see. Then walk your attention toward it, one pool at a time. When you arrive, choose the next lamp. The work will inherit the street's patience. As the curve leads toward St. James's, the sound begins to smuggle in a note of green from somewhere ahead. The rain's register changes by a degree-less echo, more leaf, a soft percussion that wood and water negotiate together. Regent Street begins to hand the night forward to the park. The way one movement in a suite leaves a final chord still ringing as the next begins. The lamps keep their ovals. The stone keeps its polish. The road keeps its sheen. I take one more look back along the arc, the lamps reducing to a calm string, the facades reading as one continuous thought, and then turn toward the darker margin where trees begin to appear. The city is about to trade stone for leaf, shopfront for path, marquee for canopy. The rain cooperates with both worlds. We'll follow it from one to the other at the same unhurried pace, carrying Regent's measured glow into the hush of green. The city gentles itself at the park's edge. Stone gives way to leaf. Colonnade becomes canopy. I pass through the iron gate and the air changes at once cooler, greener, full of small sounds that rain invents when it meets trees. Path gravel darkens and softens underfoot, each step a quiet hush rather than a click. Lamps stand back among trunks, halos blurred to honey by the mist. The world narrows to three notes: rain on leaf, rain on earth, rain on water somewhere ahead. Close by, plane trees present broad hands to the sky. Drops collect at the tips, draw themselves long, then fall with a rounder woodland note. Under the leaves, the rain divides into a finer instrument, the shiver of twig, the patter on a glossy laurel, the brief drumming on the canvas of a park sign. The smell is a calm recipe: wet bark, clean soil, a mild tea of crushed leaf underfoot. The city is still audible, but only at the edges, the way memory is audible beneath a dream. A bench sits inside a lamp's oval, its slats lacquered by weather. Beads form along the top rail, evenly spaced as if measured by hand. Every few seconds, one lets itself go and lands with a soft wooden tick. If you're here to fall asleep, you can lend your breath to that rhythm. Gather, hold, release. If you're here to work, mark the next thought by the next drop one idea per bead, then let it join the rest. Somewhere ahead, the lake speaks in whispers, but for now the path keeps to trees. Leaves make their own percussion. Big, slow notes from chestnut, higher, quicker ones from oak and hornbeam. The understory contributes a delicate shake where rain passes through a holly's stiff gloss. A night bird issues a low, questioning call from the deeper dark. Another answers from farther off, the sound folded small by wet air. The city's earlier palette cream facades, neon, glass has reduced to greens and browns and the pale amber of lamps, each color truer for being fewer. I slow to listen to a new texture, rain striking the polished trunk of the beach. It's a tight, bright sound, like fingertips on a drum head, different from leaf, different from stone. A windless minute lets the canopy become a ceiling. Drops accumulate at a dozen edges, and for a blissful stretch, release in near unison. A soft applause that leaves the air cleaner than before. The path receives it all without complaint, edges feathered into damp grass, where small channels carry water toward the lake. A squirrel pauses on the path's edge, tail a wet brush dipped in gray. It decides against crossing and vanishes into ivy that gleams like bottle glass. In the next pool of light, rain shows itself as visible threads for instant silver lines slanting through honey, then disappears again into the general hush. The lamppost hums at the edge of hearing, filament wrapped in glass, glass wrapped in mist. Shadows are friendly here. They don't hide, they soften. Ahead, the ground lowers. The air warms by a finger's width, and the scent of water joins the recipe mineral, reflective. The first hint of the lake comes as a change in sound, not louder, but wider. Raindrops on open water create a field of close, even beats, a quiet fizz that organizes thought without demanding it. A coot breaks the surface with the faintest rip. The circles push through the rain as stipple and write a sentence that fades as soon as it is read. The bird murmurs once, a comma in the paragraph, and drifts into the reed shadow where droplets hang as tiny pearls along each blade. I pause where branches lean toward the path and create a green room. On one side, a maple holds 1,000 small mirrors. On the other, a yew draws the rain into its deep shade and gives it back as a whisper. The map's veins have darkened. The leaf reads like wet vellum. When a gust nudges the canopy, a minor chord travels from left to right shiver. Patter, hush then settles to the original key. If sleep is your aim, this is a good page to turn, let the chord pass through you, and when it resolves, resolve with it. If focus is your aim, take the chord as a cue to renew attention. Inhale on shiver, exhale on hush, continue. The bench ahead faces a thin path of water that runs from path edge to lake like a silver ribbon. A single leaf has found the ribbon and travels its length with tiny, precise turns, spins once at a dip, then rides straight into the lake and disappears beneath a lace of surface rings. It's a complete story in 15 seconds, told without words. The rain edits nothing out. It adds clarity. In the near dark, a heron stands as a shape more than a bird's late impatience on a half-submerged post. Rain draws lines along its back and gathers to drip from the point of its bill. The drop falls, another gathers. The heron does not move except to agree with gravity. Behind it, the lake reflectively holds 2 lamps as long, trembling stems. Where a duck cleaves those stems, the gold breaks into coins and smooths back into lines before the next ring arrives. Water practices calligraphy. Wind turns the page. The path lifts over a shallow rise and offers a view back into the lamp-shot trees. From here, the park reads like a room with many corners, a place to sit and count the space between drops, a place to walk and number ideas by footfall, a place to notice that quiet has layers. A jogger passes, cadence softened by wet grit. Their jacket makes its own rain, a finer pattern arm and hip that falls a beat behind their steps. The sound fades before it reaches the next lamp, absorbed by leaf and air. Above the lake, the causeway waits in a softer darkness, a silhouette with a rail that wears a simple crown of beads. We'll cross it later. For now, I stay with the trees and their masonry of calm. Moss on a low wall holds water as if set with thousands of green sequins. Root flares make shallow pools where small constellations of raindrops repeat the lamp in miniature. Every detail is a modest performance, the kind that repays attention and costs nothing to watch. If your eyelids are dropping, you can borrow the park's method, reduce to essentials. Keep only the low call from the far shrub, the even patter on leaf, the long vowel of the lake. Breathe on, force two in, two out, and let the path walk itself. If you're working, set small waypoints. The next lamp for the next thought, the next bench for the next revision. Rain will manage the metronome. Trees will handle the soundproofing. A last brief rain thickening rounds the scene, the sort that tightens the pattern without changing the tune. Leaves applaud again. The lake smiles in a million soft dimples. A bird tucks its head and redraws its outline by 1 inch. When the rain eases back to its steadier fall, everything looks newly explained. Trunks darker, paths clearer, lamps warmer. The park breathes out. I match it, breath for breath. At the fork ahead, one path leads toward the lake's bridges, the other back under the deeper canopy where you can hear rain tracing a slower geometry along long boughs. Both are true. Both are kind. The night asks nothing of us except to choose a direction and keep the pace we've learned. I touch the rail of the nearest lamp, feel the precise cool of wet metal, and set off toward the water's edge, carrying the leaf music with me. The path tips gently toward the water, and the park rearranges itself around the lake. Sound presses wider, less leaf, more open surface. Raindrops write a close pattern across the skin of the water, tiny dimples knitting and smoothing so quickly they look continuous. Lamps along the edge send long gold stems into the lake. Each stem trembles with every drop and then reforms, a calm that can rebuild itself endlessly. At the parapet, the stone is dark and cool, beveled to shed. Thin threads run along the top and gather at a moss corner where they let go in slow, rounded notes. I lean and look straight down. The bank keeps a narrow shelf of clear water, shallow enough to see pebbles and a white feather pinned flat by rain. Beyond the shelf, the lake turns to graphite. A duck draws a slow seam through it. The seam fills behind her and leaves the surface cleaner than before, as if movement were a way of tidying. A wooden footbridge waits ahead with a small arch, handrails beaded like strings of cold pearls. Up close, the planks drum a different register under the weather hollow, patient, a soft thump that the rain immediately smooths. Every few steps, a drop from the rail's underside gains enough weight to fall. It lands on the lake below with a single bright ring that travels out to meet 100 others. If you're drifting toward sleep, match that ring with your breath. Ring in, ring out. If you're working, let each plank be a marker 1 thought per plank. Look up at the middle. Finish at the far rail. The arch changes the view by inches. From the crown, the lamps along the bank align into a slow constellation. Their reflections red as a broken necklace on the water, beads spaced by ripples, rethreaded by calm. A coot scolds once from inside the reed margin. The sound arrives padded by wet air and lands as a small, round note. In the reeds themselves, droplets string along each blade in neat gradients, large at the bend, smaller toward the tip gravity practicing calligraphy. Leaving the bridge, the path trims the water's edge. A low fence of painted metal keeps company with the shore. Its uprights collect small crowns at their caps and release them in orderly turns. The smell shifts a half-tone musk bark now, more mineral, the clean scent that rises from stone after a long drink. Somewhere behind me, a jogger crosses the bridge, and the plank drum rolls out and fades. Not a rhythm so much as a suggestion of one. A narrow wooden jetty pokes into the lake, just far enough to change the sound. The rain here is a tighter pattern. Drops meet timber, water, then timber again, 3-syllable phrases repeated until the mind relaxes to match them. I step out and pause at the end. Beneath me, fish lift the surface and leave coin-sized rings that slide under the rain stipple and vanish. Farther out, a gull ghosting low skims the lake and paints a pale arc of wake, a pencil line lightly drawn over wet paper. From the jetty's end, a second footbridge shows itself across a narrower channel lower, closer to the water, rails polished by many hands and tonight by rain. I return to the path and let it lead me there. The ground gives a small hollow clink where the edge stones meet. Puddles here are half moons trimmed against the curb, each carrying half a lamp, half a sky. When a breeze ruffles the surface, the half lamps turn to a scattering of coins and then draw back together into a single steady stem. This bridge sits near a lightly sheltered cove, and the lake's voice changes again, more echo, as if the trees were folding the sound into a bowl and handing it back. Drops on the underside of the rail are audible now, close, almost percussive. The span itself is low enough that the water seems to reach up. Where rain meets rain, the dimples thicken into a delicate hiss. If sleep is near, this is an easy place to let go hiss, breath, until the mind puts itself down. If focus is the task, count the drops on the rail cap, then the posts, then the opposite cap. 3 small sets is enough to clear a lane through the next paragraph. A heron lifts from the cove, one silent unfolding, slate gray turning to motion, and glides to a post farther out. The dark of its wings softens the lamp stems and then leaves them to repair themselves. Behind the heron, the island trees carry their own weather, rain loosening in delayed intervals from heavy boughs. Those delayed drops land in larger notes thup that layer over the lake's finer hiss. 2 tempos, one calm. Past the bridge, the bank widens into a pocket where the path steps back from the water. Here the lamps are partly screened by low branches. Their light arrives broken in coins and slivers across the path. A bench sits in the best of it, armrests gathering beads that wiggle and fall in pairs. On the path itself, worms have lifted to the surface and lie in slow question marks, glistening, patient, safe on a night without feet in a hurry. At the pocket's far end, a stone culvert melts a trickle into the lake. The trickle sounds like a soft brush across paper, constant, modest, easier to hear the closer you lean. Its flow lifts a patch of water into lively detail. Bubbles gather and pop, making a tiny applause that blends into the rain. If you're working, that applause can mark small wins. If you're drifting, it can shrink the world to a friendly corner where every element is doing exactly what it should. Back near the main shore, the causeway ahead is a gentle line, a darker stripe across the lake where railings wear the rain and bright points. We'll cross it soon. For now, I follow the curve along the near bank. The city is faint at the edges, one subdued siren filtered through trees, a bus breathing somewhere beyond the fence, but here the park keeps its own measure. Ducks work the margin with tidy, practical noises. A nightbird calls once and waits for an answer that may or may not come. I stop at a final overlook before the causeway. 2 lamps stand across from each other on opposite banks. Their reflections meet in the center and braid into a floating ladder. A breeze lifts and the rungs tilt, then right themselves. The image is so literal it feels invented, and then a drop lands on my sleeve and reintroduces reality. Cold, precise, polite. I put a palm on the rail. The metal returns the same honesty, beaded and sure. A small boat, one of the park's workboats, sits tied under the shadow of a willow. Rain plays its canvas cover like a muted drum. Along the gunnel, beads travel and fall with patient, audible clicks. The rope at the cleat darkens from pale to near black and then holds, thick and saturated, color truer for being wet. The boat nods once to a passing ripple and goes back to its stillness, a sleeping thing that is also a witness. Toward the causeway, the water narrows, and the park offers one more small echo, the sharper tick of drops under the rail. The lower kiss of rain on open water, the mild drum of a hollow post, when a heavier fall gathers at its crown and lets go. 3 notes, enough to be a chord. I take them with me as I step toward the crossing, the lake at my shoulder, the footbridges behind like 2 slow breaths I've just taken and set down. The causeway lays a darker ribbon across the lake, a calm line joining 2 halves of water. Rails on either side bead with perfect discipline silver points evenly spaced, each one considering its moment before falling. I step onto the path and the sound changes key. Open water on both sides means a double hush. Dimples to the left, dimples to the right, a wide, even fizz that feels like the night smoothing its own edges. From the slow crossing, lamps along the bank throw twin ladders of gold into the lake. Each rung trembles, breaks into coins when a breeze stirs, and then rearranges itself without complaint. The island ahead sits like a pocket of darker air, trees gathered close, their branches holding a backlog of rain that releases a beat slower than the sky. Those delayed drops are larger, lower notes thup layered over the lake's fine whisper. 2 tempos, 1 patience. I pause midway and rest a hand on the iron rail. It returns a precise chill, honest and clear. Below, the surface wears a million soft dimples, so many that the pattern reads as texture more than movement. The dimples near the rail are crisp. Farther out, they become a fine haze. At the far edge, they turn back into light. A pair of ducks write a neat seam through the haze, and the seam mends behind them as if the lake were proud of being whole. Somewhere behind the trees, a bell carries round, distant, persuaded rather than loud. It may be the hour, or it may be a rehearsal, or the weather's trick of delivering memory as sound. The bell folds into the rain and becomes part of the fabric. Tone, breath, tone, breath. If you're drifting towards sleep, let that bell be your anchor point. If you're working, let it mark the paragraph where you are, a small flag that recurs and reminds you to continue. From the causeway crown, the island shows its small architecture willow overhanging, a tangle of shrubs, a pale bench nearly hidden. Water gathers on willow leaves and long clear almonds, leans and falls in strings, as if the tree were combing the weather through its hair. Beneath the willow, the lake darkens to a deeper graphite, and where the strings land, they print brief rings that travel out, touch one another, and vanish into the rain's stipple. Everything here agrees on the same vocabulary. A moorhen skitters across the surface with quick, comic steps, feet slapping a dotted path that lasts for 3 heartbeats and then erases itself. The sound is small and cheerful, the lake smiling without changing expression. Near the posts, carp lift their backs as pale shadows kiss the surface once, leave coin-sized circles that vanish under the next breath of weather. The causeway rail counts these small events in beads. Every third one drops with a soft, decisive tick. Wind remembers itself and visits in a kindly mood. It does not push, it organizes, leaves shiver and let go. The rain slants for a dozen seconds and straightens. On the far bank, a flag darkens 1 more shade, truer color for being wet. The lamp pillows breathe wider, and the island bench becomes a shape rather than an object, 2 right angles softened by mist. I stand still long enough to feel the bridge underfoot stone making a low, confident note that belongs to things built to last. The causeway lowers by a hand's breadth, and the rails widen their bead crowns, drip lines falling closer together. Below my palm, droplets cue and then leap with impeccable timing, each a tiny, complete decision. If you're here to sleep, choose 1 bead and keep it until it falls. By the time a dozen have chosen the river, your thoughts will have chosen rest. If you're here to study, let the beads mark your units, 1 sentence per drop, 1 check per post, then onward. From the downstream side, the city is a faint embroidery at the park's edge, 1 muffled siren delivered through velvet. A bus somewhere turning, rain into lace behind it, a lone horn from the river that might only be the imagination of water. The bell returns 1 round syllable, then quiet. It doesn't ask for counting, it asks for agreement. The lake nods and dimples. At the island's nearest point, a narrow channel slides under the causeway in a mild hurry. There's a new timbre here, water accelerated by constraint, a papery rustle mixed with the rain's deeper whisper. The sound writes under the rails like italic, a reminder that the lake is not a picture but a paragraph. A branch has caught at the channel's mouth, and drops gathered along it fall in a syncopated rhythm that refuses to match either side. Polite disobedience, pleasant to hear. I lean for a moment over the upstream side and watch a lamp's reflection thicken and thin as a small wave passes under it. The line becomes a chain. The chain becomes a string of pearls. The string becomes a stem again. In the near water, bubbles from something unseen reach the surface and pop soft, dry-sounding pops that read as tiny hand claps. Applause for the rain doing exactly what it does. A Hiram, perhaps the same patient figure from the cove, stands 2 posts away on a half-sunk stake. The bird is stillness shaped like intention. Rain ropes from the point of its bill at measured intervals, proof that time is passing even when nothing appears to change. When a bell tone arrives again, lower this time, the Huron lifts 1 foot, sets it down, and remains. Some responses are that small. The causeway thickens to its far side, where a low parapet of stone replaces iron for several meters. The stone has shrunk deeply. It is black at the crown, dark gray on the faces, and humility in between. Water runs along its top in 2 thin threads that meet at the corners, a narrow, lucid V that falls with a soft syllable. In the corner's shadow, moss as bright as new felt. Beads sit on it like stars spilled on cloth and do not sink. If you're listening to focus, this is a place to renew it. Pick one structure, the beads on iron, the threads on stone, the ladder of lamps, and let it be your outline for the next few minutes. If you're listening to sleep, let the outline dissolve and keep only the bell's round syllable arriving through rain. Either way, the causeway keeps the center. Water to the left, water to the right, your pace the bridge between. I take the last steps toward the far end, and the island closes a little closer to the path. Branches hold beads that release in families, 3, then 1, then none like words, spoken to remember themselves. The bank here is low. Reeds lean over a margin of shallows where the rain's dimples are clearer, each one a perfect coin of disturbance that spends itself instantly and leaves no debt. A swan moves the reeds by merely being near them. The lake lets her have the space. The bell's final tone arrives as I set a foot on the park side fader, or perhaps farther, and then the rain resumes sole authorship. Dimples, hiss, delayed drops from trees, the brief, mild drum of a hollow rail cap. When a larger bead releases, these are enough to be a song. I look back across the crossing and watch the ladders of light hold their place, and in doing so, make room for what's next. Ahead, the path lifts from the water and bends toward streets again, terraces and lanes that keep some of the park. Hush and trade it for the friendly echo of brick and pavement. We'll carry the lake's steady grammar with us, dimples, ladders, threads, beads, bell if it returns. The causeway has done its work, joining halves, giving a view to both, and settling the night into its long, even stride. The path lifts from the lake and trades leaf for brick. An iron gate breathes behind me with a soft hinge, and the city resumes its closer grammar. Curb, rail, window, curb, rail, window. Rain keeps faith, but the instruments change. The ground underfoot is now a dark ribbon of paving with a quiet sheen. The sound gains a light echo from walls that lean kindly in. Terraces stand in a calm row, their stucco fronts deepened by weather, their cornices gathering orderly threads of water that choose corners and let go. Bay windows glow with interior lamps the color of tea. On the glass, condensation turns rooms into soft paintings, edges smudged, gestures visible. A shade is lowered 2 fingers' width. A hand pauses at the cord, the shade stops. The scene decides to remain half private. On a doorstep, a choir mat grows darker ring by ring, with every footfall that has already happened and every one that will. Cast iron railings shine with the fine skin of rain. Beads stand in equal ranks along the top bar, and every third one chooses the fall, clicks against the stone coping, and vanishes into a thin, obedient rivulet. The steps behind the rails have been scrubbed clean by the day and polished by the night. They look ready to receive another century of weather. A brass letter slot wears a crown of droplets. One swells to bravery, bows, and falls with a precise note as if knocking for no one. The lane narrows to a mews, a run of brick and low doors that smell of wood and clean oil and rain. Overhead, a line of gutter chains divides the water into beaded strings that hiss politely as they reach their stones. Bicycles lean under a shallow overhang. Their spokes collect stars of light and turn them whenever a draft remembers to exist. A cat considers the weather from a windowsill, tail a soft metronome. When it blinks, the window blinks with it and the shallow puddle below. Tires on the farther street write long S's of spray that straighten the moment they remade. A bus breathes at a stop and moves on with a velvet shush. The city's palette here has reduced itself on purpose. Cream facades, black rails, graphite road, the honey of lamps folded into mist. In the near distance, a clock face gentle, certain appears between roofs and disappears again, as if to confirm that the night still knows its hour. We're walking toward it without needing to hurry. If you're drifting toward sleep, this is a kinder mattress of sound rain, rounded by walls, the soft punctuation of drips at regular places, the faint thread of tires smoothing wet road. You can let your breath copy the cadence, long even inhale down the terrace, long even exhale past the next lamp. If you're working, place small markers, one paragraph from door to door, one check from lamp to lamp, and let the street keep your tempo. At a corner, a bakery has left its signboard out. Chalk strokes are richer for being wet. The glass fog breathes in ovals, clears where someone's knuckle touched it an hour ago, fogs again. From a side vent, warm air lifts a ribbon of steam into the rain, bends it once at the cornice, and gives it back to the night. The smell is the ghost of bread and butter softened by weather. It doesn't linger. It agrees to be a memory as soon as you pass. Another row of terraces sits higher by 3 shallow steps. Water runs the handrail in 2 lucid threads that meet at the newel and drop with a wooden syllable. The steps hold slim crescents of puddle at each riser, each one a clipped mirror of the lamp above. When a breeze moves the branches of a plane tree, the crescents break into coins and then knit themselves smooth again. A door opens, warm interior air makes one polite bow to the street, and the door closes with a latch that sounds older than my lifetime and ready for the next. I follow a slight curve where stone gives way to brick and back again, as if the street were remembering versions of itself. Downspouts choose their tempos, some quiet threads that never change, some patient gathers and drops that count themselves in 3s. A drain mouth drinks rain with a low, hollow note. The note is steady enough to follow for a dozen steps without tiring. Above it, the sky has softened to a deeper pewter. Lantern halos hold their honey wider in the mist. Across a narrow intersection, a pub keeps a half-open door the way a book keeps a finger between pages. A warm square of sound steps onto the pavement glass on wood, a low laugh, a single bow of strings from a radio, and the rain edits it into a texture you can wear. The signboard over the door swings 1 degree and stops. Its chain plays 2 bright beads down to the hook. Inside, someone lifts a glass. The light finds the rim and gives it to the puddle with gratitude. The muse releases into a slightly broader lane with taller terraces and a clearer view between roofs. The clock face appears again, farther but steadier now, a domestic moon. The road tilts almost imperceptibly. Water chooses the curb and writes a thin drafted line toward a corner we will also take. In a window, a lamp with a pleated shade becomes a small lighthouse for a room. The pleats repeat in the reflection underfoot, blurred and perfect. A delivery van noses past, tires making a low brushstroke that dries behind it as the rain claims the surface once more. The van's roof carries a shallow pool that releases a fringe of droplets at the rear. The fringe plays a brief tambourine along the curbstones and is gone. In the next doorway, a pair of boots waits on a mat like punctuation. Above them, an umbrella drips from a hook and invents a rhythm of its own spare, polite, unconcerned with ours. As we turn again, the city exchanges mews for avenues without breaking the spell. Balconies appear, wrought iron and modest scrolls, each scroll holding a bead ready to become a drop. Plaster medallions darken to emphasize their relief. Brick turns velvet where the rain has soaked it to its honest color. Between buildings, a narrow view lands on stone towers and a hint of statuary. The abbey and its closer near. The air reflects that tidily. Less green now, more stone, more echo waiting to be used. If you are here to sleep, you can count balcony beads instead of sheep one across. One down, one falling, one holding, until the arithmetic solves itself and you've set the hours aside. If you are here to focus, choose the nearest window and let your idea reach it like light. When you look up next, choose the next window. The terraces will carry you. A curve in the road delivers a small square paved in clean stone. A tree at its center shakes out a thicket of delayed drops of stored rain that releases with a sound like resolved thinking. Benches face outward, their wooden arms glossy, their iron feet wearing pale crescents where the water has rinsed dust to the edges. I pause to read the small echoes, drip on wood, answered by drip on stone, answered by drip and puddle. 3 notes make a chord, and the chord keeps the square company. Past the square, the terraces step back and the street borrows a slice of sky. Far along, a tower's clock confirms the hour with a round, persuasive tone that reaches us through wet air and refuses to startle. The note rides the rain instead of crossing it. The lamp at the corner breathes. The night adds one more thread to its fabric and offers the way forward, clear and unhurried. The lane bends and the abbey's outline begins to gather at the edge of vision-pale stone, deepened by weather, tracery becoming shadow, windows storing a dim interior gold. The terraces deliver us to this threshold like a courteous host walking you to a door. Rails grow simpler, paving grows broader, sound picks up a low vowel that belongs to large stone. I take a last look back at windows and ironwork, their quiet labor of keeping the weather beautiful, and then turn toward the close. Ahead waits a space made for echo, walls that hold the rain syllables and hand them back rounded, flags that shine with a patient polish, a yard where footsteps sound like small decisions. The pace remains what the night has taught, measured, attentive, enough. The street draws a quiet breath, and the abbey arrives, not as a sudden wall, but as a pale weathered presence that has agreed to meet the rain halfway. Tracery darkens, stone drinks, and every carved leaf and figure wears a thin gloss that turns detail into whisper. The great west front rises like a memory you've been walking toward without naming, towers softened by mist, windows storing an interior gold that shows itself only as a suggestion at the edges. Rain gives the whole facade a living polish, the kind that makes age look newly understood. Underfoot, flags widen and flatten into a soft mirror. Puddles keep perfect copies of arches and windows until a drop lands and edits the line with a ripple. I step into the wide space before the doors, and the sound gathers rain on stone becomes rounder, more articulate, as if the abbey were shaping the weather into syllables it can return. A low chain guides the approach. Each link holds a bead that grows, considers, and falls with a precise tick on the post below. The posts answer one after the other, a measured call and response that never hurries. If you're drifting toward sleep, this is a gentle place to let your breath slow inhale on the lift of a tower, exhale on the downward sweep of a buttress. If you're working, let the facade be your outline, arch by arch, line by line, one clear idea at a time. Weather will handle the pacing. Stone will keep the focus. Along the west doors, the oak is blackened to a deep satin by rain. Carvings appear and recede as the lamps catch them vines, figures, the shallow geometry of panels. A bronze handle wears a crown of beads. One drop trembles at the lowest point, holds to the exact edge of falling, and then releases in a single decisive note. From somewhere unseen within, a small metal sound answers, perhaps a latch, perhaps a step so quiet that the rain folds it into itself almost at once. Gargoyles do their old work well. From high ledges, water shoots in narrow arcs that break into sleet halfway down and strike the pavement with a wider, kind note. Lower spouts, plainer and patient, deliver threads that travel the same line every night like disciplined handwriting. The bases of the piers keep small crescents of puddle where the stone meets the flags. Each crescent carries half a window, half a sky, half of the lamp's honey. When a breeze moves, the halves become coins and then rejoin into a steady mirror. Move closer and the abbey becomes the sum of its details. Between two buttresses, a plaque gathers droplets and engraved letters so that each serif looks newly cut. Along a shallow sill, rain travels in tidy runnels and drops with a tidy sound, the way a calm thought lands when it has finally reached its shape. Even the ironwork on a small gate has its own weather beads lined along curls and leaves, each making a brief, bright click when gravity persuades it. A bell tone arrives as a memory through wet air rounded, persuasive rather than loud. It might be practice, or it might be the hour leaning into itself. The note touches stone and softens, touches water and spreads, touches air and vanishes into the room tone of rain. The abbey seems to conclude the phrase by standing there, and that is enough. I round the north side where the light thins and the sound lowers. Here, the rain sounds like slow reading. Steps lie narrower, older. A low arch shelters a short run of flags whose center has polished itself with centuries of feet. The arch's triplin keeps a strict rhythm, here, 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 then a longer pause where the stone holds more water and releases it in a bigger, slower drop. The pause becomes a breath you can copy without thinking. A narrow passage leads toward Dean's Yard. It is a small corridor of softened soundstone close on either side, roofed just high enough for the rain to become a hush rather than a fall. The lamps under the stone cast smaller ovals, and the rain shows itself only as a fine silver dust in their cones for the briefest moment. The abbey's mass recedes into a felt presence behind me. Ahead waits the green quiet of a collegiate square. Dean's Yard opens with a kindness that everything wet understands. Lawn dark as velvet, paths clean as sentences, walls that have learned how to speak softly to weather. Under the arcades, water ticks from gutter lips at measured points and lands in stone basins with a round, hollow note, the pitch slightly different in each bay. The covered walk gathers steps and returns them as soft decisions, heel, hush, toe, hush. The rain above continues, but here it is organized threads, fringes, taps like a well-ordered mind. Under the cloister-like walk, columns hold small worlds on their capitals, beads rest in carved leaves. The next bead replaces the last with a courteous efficiency. The roof edge writes fringes that gather, release, steady enough to set a metronome for breath or work. If you're falling asleep, count the releases across one side, 1, 2, 3. Then abandon counting and let the rhythm carry you. If you're focused, use each bay as a page. Begin at one drain, finish at the next. Look out to the green. Rain stipples the lawn evenly, turning it to a low, living field that swallows sound rather than echoing it. Along the far wall, doors sit in quiet order, each with its own light, each with its own small porch, where water invents a local music thread on chain, tap on wood, thin curtain along slate. A bicycle leans under a stair with modest optimism. Beads on its top tube turn the lamp's oval into a handful of stars, then fall and go to join the yard's gentle grammar. At one corner, a wooden door wears a brass plate and a knocker in the shape of a ring. The plate has become a small sky filled with drops. Each letter reads truer through its lens of water. A single bead, larger than the rest, clings to the hinge and refuses to fall for a long while. When it finally lets go, it lands on the stone with a note so soft you don't hear it as sound, but as permission to move on. The air is cooler here by a degree, not unfriendly, just collected. The abbey's deep stone sits close on one side. Scholastic brick and quiet windows hold the other. The yard is a held breath the size of a block. Somewhere behind the wall, someone closes a book, and the sound is almost visible. A rook calls once and flies across, fabric black against the pewter sky, drops shaking from its wings in a brief silver halo that vanishes before it lands. In the covered walk, the ceiling boards carry small constellations of droplets at the nail heads. They hang, they shine, they fall, and new constellations appear. Along the inner wall, memorial stones read more legibly for being wet shadows in each letter, making the names and dates a touch deeper. The rain polishes remembrance without making spectacle. If you are working, choose one line from a stone, not literally, but as a metaphor for clarity, and let your draft imitate its calm. If you are sleeping, let the names become abstract patterns, soft squares of history you don't need to read to feel held. At the yard center, puddles are rare. The ground drains well. Where they do form, they are shy and exact small mirrors tucked into the geometry of paths. Each holds part of a window and part of a tree. When a drop lands, the window bends and straightens, the tree trembles and steadies. This is how the place speaks, change and return, change and return. A bell passes through again lower now, barely more than a round color painted on the air. The cloister absorbs it and lets it go. The gutters answer with their tidy punctuation. The rain writes the rest. I put a palm to a cool pillar and feel the stone's slow agreement with the weather. Nothing to resist, nothing to insist upon, only presence and purpose. If you need a marker for attention, take the yard's corners. Walk one side with your thought, turn under a drip, walk the next with its revision, turn, walk the third with its quieter version, and by the time you reach the fourth, you will know what can be left out. If you need a marker for rest, count the arches on one long side, and then forget the number the moment you reach the end. The yard will remember it for you. As rain gathers and thins in its own measure, the abbey keeps a patient silhouette beyond the low roofs, pale, dark, as the weather edits its edges. Between the covered walk and the green, the world is reduced in the best way. Stone, water, air, echo, hush, echo. Night has chosen form over spectacle, structure over noise. We carry that choice forward. The path from Dean's Yard leads outward through a modest gate back toward Government Stone and long straight streets. Whitehall waits with wet facades and measured traffic, Parliament Street with its soft, organized hum. The yard offers one last kindness before we go, a fringe of drops releasing together in a small, friendly cascade, a collective exhale. I match it with mine and step out, the abbey at my back, the city ahead, rain faithful to both. We've arrived where the night asks for nothing. The bridge keeps its patience, the river keeps its foul, and the rain keeps it small. Exact handwriting on everything it loves, iron, stone, water, light. Nothing in the frame needs help. Nothing in you needs effort. If you're here to sleep, let the scene finish the day for you. Borrow the rail's rhythm, bead forming, bead falling, and copy it with your breath. Inhale as the drop gathers. Exhale as it lets go. When numbers try to count, let them drift like rings in a puddle until they're only circles of calm. Your bed is the bridge without the weather, a place built to hold you steady while the hours pass gently underfoot. If you're here to study or work, leave the clock to the river. Take one small task and place it between two lamp ovals. Begin in the first, complete in the second. Look up, notice one detail, a coin of light on the coping, the soft tick on metal, the ladder of gold mended by a ripple, and return. Patience is contagious. Uninterrupted attention is just quiet with a job to do. We'll meet other cities with the same kindness. There's a wheel above a harbor that breathes in slow light. There are alleys where neon learns manners in the rain. There are parks that know how to speak leaf and water without raising their voice. When you want them, they're waiting collected in our Europe at Night playlist, and in the steady cadence of this channel, one walk at a time. You don't have to hurry there. Boring traveling is made for unhurried arrivals. If you feel sleep coming, let the image blur at the edges. Keep only 3 words and let them soften into one: water, light, stone. If a bell visits, accept it as proof that the night is looking after the hour so you don't have to. If a bus crosses, let its moving windows be someone else's story. If a goal draws a silver arc and erases it, let that be your last sentence before the page turns itself. And if you're still awake by choice, keep us as room tone. Rain will count the paragraphs, the river will hold the outline, the bridge will lend you its discipline, connect what's behind to what's ahead, and keep the middle calm. When you're ready to go, go gently. When you're ready to stay, stay as long as you like. The bridge isn't keeping score, neither are we. Thank you for walking at this pace. When morning comes, it will find the stone clean, the rail rinsed, the water on its way, and you rested or finished, or simply quieter than you were. That's enough. Until the next city, the next rain, the next unhurried crossing. The picture begins to dim by degrees. Lamps keep their halos. Rain keeps its fine handwriting. The river keeps its low vowel. Everything else steps back. Hold the breath of the city at this volume. A last bead forms on the rail, considers, and falls. Tick, the frame softens. We keep only 3 words and speak them slower each time. Water, light, stone. Water, light, stone. Water, light, stone. The image lowers another shade. Reflection simplified to lines, lines to coins, coins to hush. The bridge remains as an outline the rain remembers perfectly without help. Gentle credit roll, paced with the weather. Boring traveling. London in the rain location. Westminster, South Bank, Soho. St. James's Park soundtrack. Rain, river, city at walking speed length. Enough. Created for slow evenings, quiet work, and good sleep. Thanks for walking at this pace. The lamps dim. The river keeps time for us. If you're still awake, bar the cadence. Hiss, near. Hush, mid, low, under. Inhale, exhale, rest. We let go of pictures first. The frame is now a soft field where rain continues, exactly as before, with no need to be seen. A final kindness. Sleep well. Return anytime. Black arrives like a page, turn gently. The sound remains steady rain, low river, occasional soft tick on metal, then thins by a degree, then another until quiet is what the night decides, and